Chapter 906. Since he was already in the limelight, there was no reason for him to remain low-key. If he said he was going to destroy his job, then he had to thoroughly destroy it. Qin Yu glanced at his third brother, who had a dignified expression on his face. His eyes were calm and tranquil. He lifted his hand. It's here. It's here. It's here again. Because of the previous commotion, even more people had been drawn over. There were more than 10 circles around the area. At this time, everyone was shouting in their hearts. They couldn't help but widen their eyes. This was the highest-ranked treasure guardian, Red Table, and he could see through it with a single glance? It was impossible. But now, before the riddle was revealed, no one dared to express their opinion. Qin Yu's previous actions had stunned everyone. 7 times in a row, he had won with a single finger. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they wouldn't have believed it. Damn it. It would be difficult for him not to be shaken by this. His finger fell. Third brother swept his eyes over and clapped his hands. The wooden bowl that Qin Yu had chosen suddenly melted like liquid and was slowly returned to the table. Shwa! The sound of people sucking in a breath of cold air finally stopped. Everyone maintained their previous expressions, as if they had been struck by some sort of paralysis spell. How is this possible? Almost everyone was groaning inwardly, and the one who groaned the most painfully was undoubtedly the third brother across the table. What calm aura! What grand style! Everything had been torn to shreds. His eyes nearly popped out of their sockets. As he looked at the heaven incense stone, his expression was like he had seen a ghost. Impossible, absolutely impossible. Qin, you didn't give him any more time to be shocked. I won. According to the rules, you only need to give me one of the items on the shelf. He didn't choose anything. This wasn't because he was soft-hearted. Everyone regained their composure and subconsciously felt a cold chill shoot up from their spines and into their heads. This meant that he wouldn't stop until he was ruthless. That's right, he was ruthless. Even if what Qin Yu faced now was the strongest treasure guardian, Red Table. Of this, no one doubted it at all. Third brother's calm demeanor had been washed away. He glared at Qin Yu, his lips unconsciously trembling. He already knew what had happened just now. This young man in front of him. No, underneath this seemingly young skin, there was likely an old monster hiding. But that wasn't right. His appearance could be faked, but the aura of his soul couldn't be faked. This person's actual age wasn't that old. But no matter what, he had already attacked 7 times in a row, and just like before, he did not make a single mistake. If the same thing happened next, cold sweat slid down his face. Third brother took a deep breath, silently warning himself to stay calm and not panic. All these years they had seen all kinds of storms and waves. How could they capsize today? Third brother swept his eyes over Qin Yu. His cultivation was higher, so his senses were naturally clearer. This man and woman in front of him truly hadn't stepped into the divine realm. Third brother felt that he had grasped the crux of the matter. He wasn't even in the divine realm, and his life level couldn't transcend. Even if he was born with a powerful soul, there was a limit. It couldn't be too exaggerated. Even if they took a step back and this boy cultivated some incomparably powerful soul force, mystic technique that gave him extraordinary sensing abilities, it still wouldn't surpass the divine realm. Even a peak-stage God-state warrior would not be able to do anything to the maroon round table that he took out today. Then there was only a single possibility. It was a tool. The world was vast, and there were always some unexpected things that existed. In the long inheritance records of the treasure guards, there were records of cultivators that relied on special treasures to wantonly obtain wealth. Of course, since there were such records, the people that did such things naturally suffered miserable fates. After all, to the treasure guards, what they did was no different from plundering. Third brother suspected that this young man and woman in front of him had such a treasure on them. It was just that these 2 people clearly had extraordinary statuses. If this matter was exposed, There would surely be a storm if it wasn't handled well. After hesitating for only a moment, third brother clenched his teeth. He didn't care anymore. In today's situation, there was simply no way to retreat. Could he just watch on helplessly as these two people swept away all the treasures? Just thinking about the consequences caused third brother's entire body to turn cold. Taking a deep breath, third brother lifted a hand and pressed down. Guest, please wait a moment. The bet between us will not change, but I will need to pause for a moment. I ask that you two cooperate with me and do a simple examination. With these words, the atmosphere changed once more. Several treasure guards that rushed over after hearing the news revealed ill intent in their eyes. The densely packed crowd also let out a series of low exclamations. It seemed that the treasure guard's examination was indeed like this. When they suspected that a guest had used some method to break the rules, they would pause the bet and conduct an examination. However, it was said that this examination only appeared in very high-level treasure guards' gambling games. No one present had ever seen it with their own eyes. Some people's eyes began to change. No matter how they looked at it, it was impossible for two young people with ordinary auras to possess the terrifying abilities that he had displayed. If they really used some method to break the rules in the treasure guards game, that would be a great show. Before it even began, many people seemed to have already guessed the result in their hearts. Their eyes became increasingly excited. Some people even began to call their friends. With such a lively scene today, they absolutely couldn't miss it. In the past, things like night markets were rarely allowed to be opened. After all, it was easy to cause trouble when people were mixed together. But for some unknown reason, the lords of the city suddenly relaxed their stance. The previously suppressed application for the night market was miraculously approved. Along with the notice of the opening of the night market, there was also a written notice to strengthen the defenses, requesting them to send more people to ensure that the night market would not be in trouble. They also requested them to start screening in secret to remove as many unstable factors as possible in the night market. These two simple notices made the city guards flustered. Many members who were on vacation were urgently summoned back overnight. Everyone lamented. No matter how much they racked their brains, they couldn't figure out what the lords were thinking. It was just a night market. How much trouble could it cause? Could it turn the sky upside down in Pengcheng City? Why were they so anxious and concerned about it? As one of the vice-generals of the city guards, Zhu Yuan knew the reason. Because he had a very capable father, Zhu Tianda, who held an important position under the city lord and was in charge of almost one-third of the garrison outside the city. After receiving his father's vague notice, Zhu Yuan, who had been angry for a long time, knew that the opportunity he had been waiting for had finally arrived. So he activated the arrangements he had made a long time ago. He spent a great deal of energy and connections to make the appropriate arrangements, and now he was just waiting for Lei Xiaoyu to deliver herself to his doorstep. In order to avoid her suspicions, he arranged things several days after the opening of the night market. Originally, everything was going smoothly. He was just waiting for Lei Xiaoyu to lose the puppet, and then he would appear like a hero and help her recover what she had lost. Then, everything went according to plan. As long as Lei Xiaoyu developed a favorable impression of him, Zhu Yuan had absolute confidence that he would be able to move her heart and finally win her heart. But who knew that something would go wrong at the last step? A little beggar who had popped out of nowhere had ruined his good plan. Not long after, he learned that this boy's name was Qin Yu. In that moment, Zhu Yuan really had the impulse to tear him to shreds. This was because he wasn't unfamiliar with this name at all, and he had been annoyed by it for several months. Luckily, Zhu Yuan had always been cautious in his actions. He liked to leave a few things behind for himself. So, when this problem occurred, the city guards that had been keeping watch in the dark immediately moved out and took away the treasure keeper. As long as the puppet was still in his hands, he still had a chance. But Zhu Yuan was sure that the most urgent matter right now was not to continue attacking, but to drive Qin Yu away from Lei Xiaoyu. This person was far too great a threat. He absolutely could not be allowed to live. There was another disturbance in the night market, and the entire street was blocked off. The city guards had to be dispatched to maintain order. Zhu Yuan cursed inwardly, but he had no choice but to temporarily put aside his thoughts of plotting against Qinyu. He hurried over with some people. This was because he was well aware that the order to maintain order in the night market, and even the reason why it was allowed to open, all came from the will of the city lord. There couldn't be the slightest mistake. Zhu Yuan arrived. There were many people in front of him, surrounding him like a beehive. He could faintly hear some people talking. This seemed to be a treasure keeper's stall. As Zhu Yuan heard this name, his complexion darkened. They were all trash. A boy who came out of nowhere had actually seen through their trap. If he had known this would happen, he would have used a different method. Move! Disperse these people. The city guards began to move, and the crowd gradually dispersed. Zhu Yuan, who was riding a large horse, was deep in thought as his eyes wandered around. Suddenly, his expression froze as he stared at the center of the crowd. At this moment, several subordinates that were following him discovered that Zhu Yuan's hair was standing on end. What had happened? To think that the vice domain chief would lose his composure like this. When they looked over, their expressions immediately changed. They quickly lowered their heads and pretended not to know anything. They all knew that the vice domain chief was determined to win over the city lord's mansion's young miss. Today, he actually saw her being so intimate with a man. It would be strange if he wasn't angry. Zhu Yuan took a deep breath. He clenched his teeth and said, "Go and find out what happened here." Soon, a subordinate returned and briefly explained what had happened. "Investigate." Zhu Yuan's eyes brightened. He urged his horse forward. To think that such a vile thing would happen in the night market under my jurisdiction. As the vice domain chief of the city guards, I will be a witness. His voice wasn't soft, and it attracted the gazes of those around him. They all retreated with awe. To them, the vice domain chief of the city guards was an extraordinary figure. Third brother was preparing. When he heard this, his eyes brightened. "Ha ha ha! So it is vice domain chief Zhu. With your status, there is no one better than you to be a witness." Zhu Yuan nodded, not speaking much to him. He was only a treasure keeper. Even if he had some status, he didn't care much about him. His eyes turned around, pausing on Lei Xiaoyu for a moment before falling on Qinyu. Chapter 907. Cheers erupted from the crowd. Zhu Yuan's appearance was quite good. Now that he was riding his horse in such an impassioned manner, he was truly heroic and heroic. Many of the surrounding female cultivators' eyes shined and they clutched their hearts. Lei Xiaoyu's complexion changed, but soon she made a decision. For the first time, she reached out a hand and quietly grasped Qinyu's palm. This was to tell him that he didn't need to be afraid. No matter what happened today, she would ensure his safety. As the beloved daughter of the city lord, although she didn't like to use her status to suppress others, if she did, who would dare to say a single word? Seeing this, Zhu Yuan's expression didn't change. Killing intent rose from his chest, and he swept his eyes over Qin Yu's face. The coldness in his eyes could freeze the soul. He had already made his decision. Once he determined that this person was cheating in the bet, he would immediately kill Qin Yu. Even if Lei Xiaoyu loathed him, he wouldn't hesitate. If she loathed him, there might be a chance to resolve it. But if he didn't do anything, there really wouldn't be a chance. Let's begin. Third brother coldly glared at Qin Yu. Then he placed his hands on the date-red table. With a humming sound, the large bowl on the table began to rapidly melt. Like water flowing into a hole in the center, a crimson bead the size of half a man's fist slowly rose up. "Ancestor, please open your eyes." With a loud shout, third brother pointed at Qin Yu. The crimson bead flew over and slowly revolved around him. 1 revolution, 2 revolutions, 3 revolutions. Lei Xiaoyu nervously clenched her fists, her palms slightly damp. Qin Yu turned to look at her, a faint smile on his lips. His heart was calm, truly calm. There wasn't even the slightest bit of nervousness. In the endless river of time, after trillions of proud children of heaven perished, an undying true spirit would automatically condense and form a jade embryo egg. In itself, it seized the good fortune of the heavens and earth. To a certain degree, it was an existence that transcended worldly things. Even the little blue lamp placed an incomparably high value on it and was willing to pay any price to help Qin Yu fuse with it. Could the Treasure Guardian's detection technique discover it? Sorry, it wasn't that he was looking down on others, but that it was absolutely impossible. Not even the slightest bit. The crimson bead that revolved around Qin Yu didn't respond. The anticipation in everyone's eyes gradually turned to doubt, confusion, and even awe. Su San was dripping with sweat. Although his cultivation was lacking, it shouldn't be a problem for him to stimulate the detection bead's power. Why was there no reaction? Could it be that the lad's concealment ability was extraordinary, or was there another possibility? Su San dared not think about it. Putting everything else aside, just the fact that he had stopped the bet and activated the examination was already a huge offense to the other party. Shake hands and make peace? Pooh! You want to take someone's life, and there's still such a good thing? If this person really had no problems, just thinking about the consequences made Su San shudder. No, it couldn't be. He was so young and had yet to reach the mortal realm. It was impossible for him to possess such a terrifying sensing ability. He must have hidden it too well. Yes, that must be it. Zhu Youwen's complexion didn't change, but the pressure in his heart became increasingly heavy. He didn't want Qin Yu to stay by Lei Xiaoyu's side, not even for a second. Su San, is there a problem? This group of treasure keepers, from top to bottom, were all trash. Su San broke out in a cold sweat. He hurriedly said, right away. I haven't fully activated the detection treasure's power yet. Of course, this was a lie. He was already going all out. No, he was currently in an overloaded state. Ancestor, you really are an ancestor. Please open your eyes. Please open your eyes. After persisting for another moment, Su San's face suddenly paled and then flushed red. Then, in the next second, all the blood drained from his face, revealing a miserable blue hue. This happened one after another, as if he were performing a magic trick. Seeing this, everyone sighed in amazement. As Su San spat out a mouthful of blood, he fell backwards. The entire courtyard fell silent. Like this, even if no one said anything, everyone knew the result. This black-robed little brother hadn't used any methods at all. From start to finish, everyone relied on their own abilities. It was Su San, this fierce-looking treasure keeper, who had gone crazy for no reason at all, who had dug a hole for himself. These people had completely forgotten that just a moment ago, many of them had similar thoughts as Su San. Thus, it could be said that the masses were truly forgetful sometimes. It could be 3 days to 5 days, or it could be 3 seconds to 5 seconds. What was important wasn't the time, but how the situation changed and whether or not it conflicted with their attitude. I am a member of the masses. That's just how cool I am. Before the exasperated Zhu Yuan could find a chance to erupt, the crowd parted once more. This time, there were dozens of people. The one being crowded around was also a bearded man. But this person was clearly much taller than Su San. Not only was this because he had used his beard to braid his hair into a beautiful braid, but it was also because of his aura. He was as immovable as a mountain, truly the style of a great master. Just by coming here to fight, he gave off a feeling that he could shock the crowd. The atmosphere fell silent once more. Su San's face was filled with shame and embarrassment. He struggled to stand up and bow. "Teacher, this disciple has lost face for you." The bearded old man's name was Jin Shui. He was one of the top figures in the trade of treasure guards. His methods and bearing were not something Su San could compare to. He glanced at him and said, Since you know you've lost face, then don't speak anymore. Su San relaxed instead. He knew his teacher's temperament. The more bluntly he spoke, the smaller the matter would be. If he smiled and comforted him again and again, that would be nothing more than a show for outsiders to see. Even if he didn't die, he would still have to shed several layers of skin. Jin Shui didn't bother with Su San anymore. He cupped his hands together and smiled. "Guest, how do you do? My disappointing disciple has really made a joke of himself in front of you. I know that you must be feeling a bit impatient right now. You must be wondering just what is going on. Did you poke a hornet's nest? You hit the young one, and now the old one is coming. It's so tiresome." His words were humorous, and his demeanor made it easy for him to stir up emotions. The tension in the crowd immediately dissipated, and many people began to chuckle. Jin Shui paused for a moment. He continued to say, "Now, I will tell you in a very responsible manner that you can put your worries aside. I am the most experienced treasure keeper in Rock City. There won't be anyone else that will jump out later." Qin, you looked at him several times. "In other words, I will have to pass the final hurdle?" Jin Shui calmly smiled. "You can't say that. Guest, you might think that this old man's competitive spirit has been aroused. Or perhaps you don't want an old friend like me to lose without knowing why." He patted the red round table, and the probing bead held back into the round hole. "How about this? Guest, let's make another bet. Whether you win or lose, it doesn't count. Just consider it a game." Qin Yu thought for a moment and nodded. "All right." With a flick of his finger, the heaven incense stone fell into the round hole and 9 red bowls appeared. Although everything looked exactly the same as when Su San was controlling it, the feeling it gave off was different, but it was hard to say just what the difference was. Indeed, everyone was everyone. Moreover, everyone understood that the red round table was Jin Shui's and that Su San was nothing more than a fox exploiting the tiger's might. Pitiful Su San. From someone who seemed fierce at the start, he was now labeled as a fox exploiting the tiger's might. This was reality. The victor enjoyed all the flowers and glory, and the loser was trampled into the endless abyss. Step after step, Jin Shui reached out a hand and stroked the round table. His expression was warm and gentle. "Old friend, are you ready?" He waited for a moment and then stood up. His smile vanished, and the true demeanor of a great master rushed forth. He reached out a hand 1/2 a foot and lightly said, "Guest, please." Qin Yu lifted a finger. That's right, he raised his hand just like that, without any hesitation, and then tapped down. It was no different from the previous 8 times. It was like no matter who was standing in front of him, it was all the same to him. Jin Shui's complexion was a bit strange. He looked at Qin Yu and then at the round table in front of him. After a moment of silence, he smiled and said, "Guest, I wonder if we can talk." Qin Yu had been waiting for these words. Some people liked him and some didn't. He was the latter, at least today. He immediately nodded. All right. Then, the momentum of this exchange wasn't small, and it attracted a great storm. But as they spoke, the 2 sides left together. Many people were dissatisfied. They had reached the climax, so what was the meaning of this sudden stop? And the most dissatisfied was Zhu Yuwen. He wished he could choke Qin Yu to death on the spot. So how could he watch him leave? However, Jin Shui was not Su San. Although he was only a guardian, he was one of the most powerful ones among the guardians. Even Zhu Yuwen didn't dare to provoke him after some hesitation. To the west of Rock City, there was an ordinary courtyard. After stepping in, one would find out that there was a cave abode within. This was Jin Shui's residence, and also the place with the highest authority within Rock City's guardian team. Jin Shui glanced at the calm Qin Yu, who followed him in. Then he glanced at the darkness behind him and finally suppressed the last thoughts in his heart. The guest and host sat down. Jin Shui smiled and picked up a teacup. The tea leaves have no name, but the quality is absolutely top-notch. Normally, I wouldn't be willing to drink it. 2 guests, please have a taste. Qin Yu lightly said, I'm sorry, but time is tight. Let's talk business. Jin Shui wasn't angry. He took a sip and put down the teacup. He reached out a hand and said, "Guest, if you have any requests, please speak." In this world, there was no such thing as love or hate without reason. Everything had a reason. Qin Yu went straight to the point. In the night market today, a guardian was taken away by the city guards for investigation. He disappeared midway, and I need something in his hands. As for the specifics, Mr. Jin Shui can verify it yourself. I believe this shouldn't be difficult for you. Jin Shui smiled. No problem. He clapped his hands. Go. Find the boy that Guest mentioned and bring him to me. The sound of footsteps outside faded away. Jin Shui had a deep look in his eyes. Guest, do you have any other requests? Qin Yu picked up a teacup. Only this one. Jin Shui laughed. Good. From this day forth, Guest is a friend of our guardian team. He took out a dusty wooden tablet that looked very unremarkable. This is the token of the guardian. In the future, you can use this to obtain some information from us, and you can also get help within a reasonable range. Qin Yu cupped his hands together. Thank you, Mr. Jin Shui. At this point, both sides had reached a compromise. Moments later, the silent stall owner who had been taken away by the city guards was brought into the hall with a pale face. After another moment, Jin Shui personally saw Qin Yu and Lei Xiaoyu off. Both sides chatted happily. Watching the two leave, the man who had been standing behind Jin Shui from the start, like a shadow, finally spoke up in a hoarse voice. He chose. Jin Shui understood his meaning. He shook his head. I don't know, but I can't gamble. You did the right thing. The man closed his eyes and ended the conversation. Jin Shui narrowed his eyes. He looked in the direction the two left in. If it weren't for the City Lord Mansion's miss being present, he really would have wanted to keep Qin Yu here and figure out what secrets this junior had. But subconsciously, there was a feeling of danger lingering in his heart. It was like once he took action, there would be great trouble. Chapter 908. Lei Xiaoyu carefully looked at them for a moment. Then she wrapped them up in velvet and put away the two puppets. She happily said, Big brother Qin Yu, thank you so much for today. Qin Yu looked at her and smiled. There's no need to thank me. Just consider it a little compensation for making you search for me for so long. Lei Xiaoyu blushed. Why did Qin Yu mention this? It was a little embarrassing. As her fingers were intertwining, Qin Yu suddenly called out to her. Ah, what is it, big brother Qin? Qin Yu said, Xiaoyu, I hope that your future life will be as happy as it is now. Without waiting for Lei Xiaoyu to respond, he turned and faced the darkness. I'm leaving. Send her home. After a brief silence, two figures emerged from the darkness. Their bodies were wrapped in black robes, as if they had melted into the night. At this time, the black-robed figures looked at Qin Yu with shock in their eyes. This brat had already discovered them. Lei Xiaoyu's eyes widened. Big brother Qin. Qin Yu waved his hand and walked away. When Qiao Yaozong first invited him, and he agreed, he had already made up his mind. Now he had finally decided. The reason he didn't save Lei Xiaoyu was because the price was too great and Qin Yu couldn't afford it. Although there were great waves in his heart, he could still calmly face them. But if he wanted to borrow Lei Xiaoyu's favorable impression to continue using her, this touched Qin Yu's bottom line. He thought he could do it, but he discovered that he had overestimated himself. Since he couldn't do it, he might as well leave and look for other solutions. This was because every day was precious to him. Big brother Qin, wait. With the sound of footsteps, Lei Xiaoyu caught up. Her face flushed red. You want to leave Rock City? Qin Yu said, all good things must come to an end in this world. Moreover, I am only an ordinary guest of Rock City. Lei Xiaoyu bit her lips. She suddenly panicked. Once Qin Yu left, she would never see him again. Big brother Qin, am I your friend? Qin Yu was surprised. He nodded. Of course. Then shouldn't friends help each other? Lei Xiaoyu continued to ask. Qin Yu hesitated for a moment. What do you want to say? Lei Xiaoyu said, I know. There must be a reason why you appeared on your own initiative. She continued, Big Brother Qin, if there is anything you need my help with, please tell me. With just a few words, Qin Yu knew that this was a smart girl. Meeting her eyes, Qin Yu thought for a moment. If he said he didn't, then he would be deceiving himself and insulting her intelligence. There were some problems at first, but now I've thought of a better solution. Lei Xiaoyu shook her head. Big Brother Qin, you're not telling the truth. She seemed to have thought of something. After a moment of silence, she said, Big Brother Qin, you are truly a good person. I know you don't want to use me, but if you are willing to stay, I will be very, very happy. The happiness you bring me is the best reward for me. Of course, if Big Brother Qin feels that this reason isn't enough, then I'll add another one. Perhaps I can think of a way to make you fall in love with me while you're here. Lei Qianjun closed his eyes and asked softly, Did Xiaoyu really say that? The butler nodded. Yes, I understand. Lei Qianjun tapped his fingers on the armrest and continued, Tomorrow, bring him to the study. I want to see with my own eyes just how capable this boy that can move my daughter's heart is. The butler said, In addition, I've already investigated the matter you asked me to investigate. The one who arranged this was Zhu Tiande's second son, Zhu Yuan. Lei Qianjun coldly sneered. Humph! Not only are there many tigers and wolves in my rock city, but there are also many smart people at home. Go remind Zhu Tiande and have him think about what he should do. There must be a result within 3 days. As for the other little fellows that participated in this matter, all of them should go behind closed doors and reflect on their mistakes. In the future, without permission, don't come to the city lord's mansion again. The butler hesitated. Master, because of her health, the young miss hasn't had many friends these years. If you do this, I'm afraid she will be sad. Lei Qianjun said, Xiaoyu's friends have never considered her feelings. The butler said, The young miss is very smart. Even if she was involved at the time, she should understand by now. It's best to let her choose what to do. The butler, who had always been cautious with his words and actions, had said enough today. Lei Qianjun glanced at him, his eyes faint. You've sensed it? The butler bowed even lower. Yes. There was a moment of silence. Lei Qianjun waved his hand. The butler took several steps back and respectfully left. After leaving the study, the butler habitually looked up at the sky and slowly let out a breath. Qin Yu's first night at the city lord's mansion was spent peacefully cultivating. After considering it over and over again, he finally agreed to Lei Xiaoyu's request. Although she had made it clear that she hoped Qin Yu would stay and that she had given him enough face and a way out, Qin Yu's heart was filled with even more emotions. Every time he faced Lei Xiaoyu, he couldn't help but think that this girl only had less than 3 years left to live. There was a knock on the door. Qin Yu restrained his emotions and opened the door. A maid bowed. Sir Qin, the city lord requests your presence. The butler was waiting outside the study. He waved his hand for the maid to leave. He glanced around and said, Qin Yu, the city lord is currently handling some matters. You can wait in the side hall. Qin Yu nodded. He turned and entered the side hall, choosing a seat to sit down. The massive rock city governed a territory of hundreds of thousands of miles. There were countless matters that needed to be handled every day. There were many people waiting in the side hall. When Qin Yu arrived, many eyes gathered on him. There were many curious people and even more picky people. But whether they were curious or picky, there was a bit of coldness in their eyes. This was the boy who was able to move into the city lord's mansion because the young miss liked him? Those in high positions had no secrets. Last night, Lei Xiaoyu had brought Qin Yu back to the mansion. In a single night, This news had spread to everyone with the qualifications to know. And those that could come to this side hall and wait to be summoned by the city, Lord naturally had the qualifications to do so. Qin Yu had a calm expression. His eyes drooped down, blocking out all gazes. His heart was calm and tranquil. This performance left many people secretly surprised. They immediately felt a bit of appreciation, but most of them sneered inwardly. But no matter how they thought about it, no one would express their stance in this place. They all coldly watched from the sidelines. People walked in and out of the side hall. As others were observing Qin Yu, he was also observing them. Time slowly passed. Soon the sun reached its zenith. During these 4 hours, Qin Yu finally experienced just what sort of status the city, Lord of Rock City, had. In this side hall, there were people who were brimming with confidence, their eyes filled with disdain. There were people who were wild and unruly, their auras tumbling around them. There were also people who were silent, but their killing intent was startling. But no matter who it was, when they received an audience, they all stood up and straightened their robes. At the same time, they restrained all of their auras and displayed their most docile and respectful attitude. This was authority, unsurpassed authority, to cause chaos with a flip of one's hand. Finally, the last cultivator in the side hall respectfully left. Qin Yu waited for a moment before the steward appeared at the door. Qin Yu, the city lord wishes to see you. He put down his teacup and followed behind the steward. They passed through a beautiful garden and arrived outside the study. The steward reached out and pushed open the door. He signaled with his eyes, and Qin Yu stepped in. As he looked around, he saw Lei Qianjun sitting behind a desk, his eyes closed in meditation. Strictly speaking, this was the second time the two of them had met. But the last time they met at Object Beyond Mountain, Lei Qianjun had been shaken by Qin Yu's aura and had restrained all of his sharp claws and teeth. Today, they met again in a different identity and in Lei Qianjun's study. Lei Qianjun's calm and unrestrained aura was like a towering mountain that pierced through the heavens, towering between the heavens and earth, suppressing the world in all directions. Taking a deep breath, Qin Yu bowed. "Greetings, City Lord Lei." "You are Qin Yu?" "Yes." "Xiao Yu has already told me about the matter. She wants to borrow the soul-forging array formation." "How bold of you! Do you know the costs of activating the array formation?" Qin Yu said, "This junior can pay for it." Lei Qianjun lightly said, "If it weren't for Xiao Yu speaking up, you wouldn't have the qualifications to stand here, much less make a deal with me." Qin Yu frowned. He cupped his hands together. "I ask City Lord to explain." Lei Qianjun opened his eyes. "You are smart. You know that if I refuse, I won't give you the chance to enter." He lifted a hand and lifted a finger. "There is one more thing. If you agree to marry Xiao Yu and become my Rock City son-in-law, you can use the soul-forging array formation." Qin Yu didn't hesitate. He shook his head. "City Lord, I am already married and have a harmonious relationship with my Tao companion. Forgive me for not being able to comply." Lei Qianjun coldly sneered. "Us cultivators don't need to be bothered by trifles. As long as two people are in love with each other, what does it matter if I have 3 or 4 wives? Or are you saying that you look down on my daughter?" Qin Yu said, "Xiao Yu is a good girl. I feel honored to have obtained her favor, but if I really agree and use this in exchange for using the soul-forging array formation, that would be the greatest blasphemy against her." Lei Qianjun leaned forward, a boundless pressure rushing towards him. "Qin Yu, are you sure you want to refuse my only request?" The air nearly froze. The motionless Lei Qianjun gave off the feeling that he was a cruel and ruthless beast, one that could descend at any moment to slaughter everything. Qin Yu was like a rock in a stormy sea. Pressure swept towards him from all directions, constantly impacting his mind. Sweat gushed out, soon soaking his back. But his back remained straight, and he maintained his initial silence. "Father, With a loud shout, a small door on the side of the desk was pushed open. The terrifying aura that filled the space instantly vanished. It was as if everything just now had been an illusion. Lei Xiaoyu's face flushed red. She loudly said, "How could you treat Big Brother Qin like this? That's not what we agreed on." Lei Qianjun had a helpless expression. "You are my precious daughter. I was afraid that you would suffer a loss, so I had to properly test you. This boy's character seems barely passable." Lei Xiaoyu stomped her feet in anger. She hatefully said, "Then are you done testing now?" Lei Qianjun chuckled and nodded. Lei Xiaoyu grabbed onto Qin Yu. "Big Brother Qin, let's go." Qin Yu took 2 steps and stopped, indicating for Lei Xiaoyu to stop. He turned and cupped his hands together. "City Lord, rest assured. I am grateful that I was able to use the soul forging array formation today. If possible in the future, I will certainly repay you." Lei Qianjun waved his hand, not saying anything. Chapter 909. What do you think of this boy? The steward said, very calm and imposing. Lei Qianjun pointed at him. "You're not speaking the truth. This boy is very proud, but more than pride, he is confident." He smiled. "It's been many years since I've seen such an interesting boy. He was able to maintain his composure even under my pressure. Do you know what I felt from him at that moment? Come. Although he looks like he's in a sorry state and his face is pale, there is no fear in the depths of his heart. It's as if he could escape unscathed, even if I were to attack him. This boy is interesting." The steward knew that the city lord admired Qin Yu after saying that he was interesting twice. He hesitated for a moment before asking, "Then what about the matter you mentioned just now?" Lei Qianjun shook his head. "This boy has a backbone. Since I wasn't able to force him to bow his head today, I won't mention it again. Otherwise, he will definitely leave. I don't want Xiaoyu to be sad, so I'll let him be." The steward said, "The eldest young master also applied to use the spirit casting array some time ago, but you refused because the time wasn't right. I'm afraid the eldest young master will have other thoughts." Lei Qianjun lightly said, "He is my son. It's fine if he has other thoughts. But before I die, he'd better endure it." The steward nodded. "I understand." He sighed inwardly. The eldest young master's talent and temperament were above average, but it was a pity that he was born in the family of the city lord. This was another test. After obtaining Lei Qianjun's approval, the process of Qin Yu borrowing the soul forging array formation was extremely smooth. What was even smoother was that this incomparably precious array formation, which Xiang Shui had described as a shocking expense, was actually constructed in Lei Xiaoyu's residence. No matter how one looked at it, this array formation was prepared for Lei Xiaoyu alone. As these thoughts swirled in his mind, Qin Yu followed behind Lei Xiaoyu and saw her easily open all sorts of restrictions. When they arrived outside the spirit casting array and opened it, Qin Yu was certain. Lei Qianjun truly doted on this daughter of his, to the extreme. Big Brother Qin. No disturbances are allowed during the use of the spirit casting array. This jade slip contains all the control methods and seals for entering and exiting this place. Remember to memorize the technique and keep the jade slip safe. Remember not to lose it. After giving a few more instructions, Lei Xiaoyu left with a smile. Looking at her back, Qin Yu sighed inwardly. This was indeed an exceptionally intelligent girl. He took a deep breath and suppressed these thoughts. He probed the jade slip with his divine sense and took it back a moment later. He placed the jade slip in his chest pocket and stepped into the soul forging array formation. On the ground, diamond-shaped dots of light lit up. Apart from these, there was nothing unusual. However, only after stepping into it did one understand the mysteries of this array formation. As he moved through it, the air was like a surging underground river, and countless torrents shook about wantonly. Every single step he took had to be careful and landed at the right place, otherwise he would be directly squeezed out and even if he was a god realm cultivator, he would suffer heavy injuries. According to the records in the Jade Slip, after walking for a while, Qin Yu finally stepped into the core of the array formation. All of the shaking strength immediately dissipated. Sitting down cross-legged, Xiao Chen could immediately sense strands of weak energy being drawn out of the void by the soul-forging formation and merging into his body. This strength. A trace of surprise appeared in Qin Yu's mind. But before he could think too much about it, the sun and moon force field in his soul space suddenly began to ripple. Although it wasn't violent, it was like a handful of sand being thrown into a lake. But the changes occurred in these seemingly ordinary and minute fluctuations. They were like holes that were suddenly opened up, connecting to an unknown land. Then a powerful suction force was released from these holes, causing the soul-casting array to tremble even more intensely. The edge of the space was like a mirror, instantly filled with countless cracks. Then, pieces fell off, tumbling and disappearing, leaving behind only a pitch-black void. From this nothingness, a massive amount of strange strength surged out. Compared to before, the amount had increased by at least 10 times. Qin, you didn't need to absorb it. As the sun and moon force field revolved, all of this strange strength was pulled in and directly fused into Qin Yu's body. At this moment, it wasn't just his soul. Every inch of Qin Yu's flesh and blood, every inch of his bones, was instinctively cheering in excitement. They were constantly becoming stronger. Although the extent was small, this sort of continuous and clear improvement was already an unimaginable miracle. Qin, you didn't know why the soul-forging array formation was able to resonate with the sun and moon force field, but this was clearly better for him. After sensing it for a moment and determining that this sort of resonance wouldn't affect the soul-forging array formation, Qin Yu closed his eyes and absorbed it with all his might. The soul-forging array formation consumed an astonishing amount of energy. This wasn't just empty talk. Even with the background of the City Lord Mansion, it had taken them nearly 5 years to construct this array formation. Afterwards, in order to ensure that the soul-forging array formation could be smoothly used, Lei Qianjun ordered the formation of a special maintenance team. 3 array formation grandmasters and 27 auxiliary cultivators, for a total of 30 people, were responsible for the soul-forging array formation. When Qin Yu obtained Lei Qianjun's permission and obtained the qualifications to use the soul-forging array formation, the 30-person team had already prepared ahead of time and filled in all the materials they needed. Today, according to the reports, Lei Xiaoyu had brought Qin Yu to the location of the array formation. After a moment, the array formation opened and all the materials were used up. At the start, everything was normal, but after a short period of time, the 4 auxiliary cultivators responsible for observing and recording the array formation's data couldn't help but widen their eyes, inexplicably shocked. Continue recording. I will go report to the Grandmaster. One of them turned and wildly ran away. Soon, the 3 cultivating Grandmasters gathered in front of a screen of light that projected data. As they looked at the array formation's energy reserves that were rapidly decreasing, they all had dignified expressions. Immediately fill in the materials and maintain the array formation's normal operation. Start the self-inspection. See if there are any accidents with the array formation. Start the backup energy reserves to prevent the array formation from being damaged due to insufficient supply. The 30-person team began to operate at full speed. An hour later, as the 3 Grandmasters looked at the reports in their hands, they frowned. They looked at each other in dismay, all of them speechless. Everything was normal. That's right, this was the final conclusion. Worried that their subordinates weren't meticulous enough, the 3 Grandmasters personally inspected the array formation twice, and the results were the same. Fellow Taoists, come with me to see the City Lord. A Grandmaster said with a sigh. In the years since the spirit-casting array was completed, the City Lord's mansion had always treated them well. Fortunately, The array formation had always operated smoothly, so the three grandmasters had a clear conscience. But today, the array formation had a problem for the first time, and they couldn't find a way to solve it. Although the results of the inspection had nothing to do with the array formation itself, this matter wasn't pleasant to the ears. If word got out, they would probably become a laughingstock. It was impossible to hide it. Once the spirit casting array was activated, the consumption was already astonishing. Now that it had increased by more than 3 times, it would burn up an unimaginable amount of wealth every hour. Lei Xiaoyu, who knew that something was wrong with the spirit casting array, didn't know what the problem was. Before the 3 grandmasters arrived, she found Lei Qianjun and begged him to take care of this matter. Looking at his beloved daughter's nervous expression, Lei Qianjun, who felt sour in his heart, readily agreed, telling her not to worry about anything. When the 3 grandmasters arrived and roughly explained the situation, Lei Xiaoyu let out a long breath and hurriedly asked, "Grandmasters, it's just that the consumption has increased. There's nothing wrong with the array itself, right?" One of the grandmasters said, "Yes, Mississippi. According to our inspection, the array formation is operating normally." That's good, that's good. Lei Xiaoyu was overjoyed. Lei Qianjun grinned. Although he had a large business, there was no reason for him to give it to an outsider for free, let alone 3 times the consumption. This lass, another grandmaster, pondered for a moment and said, "City Lord, according to our calculations, there should be some unknown changes in the environment outside, causing the spirit casting array to operate and the consumption of energy to skyrocket. This should be a coincidental situation. If we temporarily shut down the array and wait for a period of time before activating it again, we should be able to avoid unnecessary losses." Lei Xiaoyu didn't want to be too obvious in front of outsiders, so she hurriedly widened her eyes and looked over. Lei Qianjun coughed lightly. "There's no need. How can I go back on my word? It's just a little more consumption. You can go now. I will give you new instructions and give you enough authority to allocate energy to ensure the consumption." "Yes, City Lord." The 3 grandmasters stood up and excused themselves. Lei Xiaoyu ran over and stood behind Lei Qianjun, rubbing and pinching him with an affectionate expression. "Father, you're so cool. I love you so much." Lei Qianjun coldly snorted. "I can't see what's so good about this stinky brat that he's worth you treating him like this." "Father," Lei Xiaoyu wrinkled her nose. "Just think of it as doing this for me. All right, I won't talk to you any longer. I'm going back to cultivate." She turned and ran away happily. The steward said in a soft voice, "After Qinyu entered the spirit casting array, the miss has been waiting outside." Lei Qianjun closed his eyes. "I understand." The sounds of smashing and smashing continued in the room for a long time. The maids and guards outside lowered their heads, wishing they could break their necks for fear that they would be angered. During this period of time, the eldest young master had been in a bad mood. But today it was especially bad. Lei Jinyun's foot had smashed apart the gold cloud wood. He gasped for breath, nearly destroying the entire room. The anger in his heart burned brighter and brighter, his eyes faintly turning red. With a creaking sound, the door opened. Lei Jinyun turned and roared, "Who let you in? Get the hell out of here." The footsteps paused for a moment. Then a calm voice sounded out, "Issue a gag order. If anyone dares to leak what happened today, they will not be forgiven. In addition, immediately send someone to clean up this place and restore it to its original state." After the order was given, a dignified man in his 50s and Taiping walked in. He cupped his hands together and said, "Greetings, eldest young master." Lei Jinyan took a deep breath and squeezed out a smile. "I didn't know it was teacher. This student didn't mean to offend you. I ask teacher to forgive me." And Taiping was a famous scholar of Rock City. He came from a great family that had been passed down through generations. Lei Qianjun had personally visited him several times to invite him to be his teacher. His status was extremely high. Chapter 910. Lei Jinyun's complexion changed. He bitterly smiled. Teacher is right. This disciple understands. I was just feeling vexed and couldn't vent it. And Taiping sighed inwardly. Sometimes he could understand Lei Jinyun's actions. It was because the city lord's actions were too profound and difficult to grasp. As the eldest son of the first wife, Lei Jinyun's performance, in all aspects, was satisfactory. No matter how he looked at it, Lei Jinyun was the best candidate to inherit the throne in the future. Yet he was forced into a dilemma by a little girl. These past years he had repeatedly made mistakes. Although it was rare for a woman to inherit the throne, it wasn't unprecedented. And the city lord's love for Lei Xiaoyu far surpassed imagination. One couldn't help but wonder, eldest young master, you should remember that your status is precious and you are the focus of everyone's attention. Your every action will be infinitely magnified and become evidence of the outside world's scrutiny. As long as you do your best, your future will be bright. After all, it is difficult for a mere woman to obtain the approval of everyone. Moreover, eldest young master has chosen an excellent marriage. Your wife's family will help you, and they will not allow eldest young master's status to be challenged. Within Taiping's status and identity, he would always leave some leeway when expressing his stance. Today was the first time he had analyzed the situation so bluntly. Lei Jinyun revealed a grateful expression. Teacher, I understand. This disciple will be careful and will not disappoint you. And Taiping shook his head. What eldest young master needs is not to disappoint me, but to live up to the status and identity the heavens have bestowed upon you. As long as you don't make any mistakes, the throne will surely belong to you in the future. An hour later, and Taiping bid his farewells and left. Lei Jinyun's tumbling heart finally calmed down a little. But every time he thought about how his father had agreed to let an outsider use the soul-forging array formation, his heart couldn't help but twitch. He was also his own son, and the eldest son of the first wife. How could he not compare to a concubine woman? He couldn't even compare to that wild man she had found somewhere. Lei Jinyun couldn't understand. After finishing dinner and returning to his chambers, Lei Jinyun dismissed the maids. Then he pulled on his wife and walked towards the bed without a word. A burst of nonsense. It was as if his conservative and reserved wife knew that he had a fiery temper. Lei Jinyun was greatly satisfied with her cooperation. After a long time, the clouds dispersed. Lei Jinyun caressed the woman in his arms and said in a low voice, "Thank you." His wife leaned against his chest. She changed her position and shook her head. "Since I married you, I'm yours." After a pause, his wife said softly, "I know you are angry, but we cannot go against father's will." Lei Jinyun said in a muffled voice, "I understand." "You don't understand." His wife propped herself up, exposing her upper body. The spirit casting array belongs to the Lei family. Apart from direct descendants, anyone who wants to enter will need to use a jade slip. We cannot go against father's will, but if Chinyu makes a mistake, then we have a chance to express our stance. Lei Jinyun frowned. "What are you trying to say?" His wife replied calmly, "The Shi family is on good terms with the Wu family of Black Marsh. A few days ago, father sent me a letter saying that a Wu family elder will be passing through Shenzhen City and asked you to attend to him on his behalf. It shouldn't be too long now." Black Marsh Wu family? Yes, this is an opportunity. But today, teacher warned me not to act rashly. Teacher is right. Dealing with the myriad changes by remaining unchanged is our best choice. But you must remember that as the eldest son of the first wife, what you need to face isn't just a test from father. There are also many people secretly observing you to determine whether or not you want to place a bet. The spirit casting array was given to Chinyu to use, but he is only Lei Xiaoyu's friend. In truth, it isn't just us who are dissatisfied with this. If you act now, you can express your attitude and also borrow the momentum of the situation. Even if father learns of this, he won't say anything. This is because, with your status, There are some matters in which you have the qualifications to express your opinion. Making your voice heard is a good thing for us. Lei Jinyun's complexion was cloudy and uncertain for a long time. Then he hugged the woman in his arms and fiercely penetrated her body. Since this is Lord Father-in-law's order, I will obey. Winning over the support of my wife's family is also something I should do. 5 days later, the spirit casting array formation gradually fell silent. The surrounding shattered space slowly reformed as it was in the beginning. The last wisp of strange strength was absorbed by his body and soul. Chinyu opened his eyes and let out a light breath. Shwa, a sharp light flashed. Chinyu stood up. There was a loud crackling sound from his bones, as if they were connected together. But now, the harvests of his mortal body were secondary. What he truly cared about was the growth of his soul. After carefully sensing it for a long time, Chinyu couldn't help but smile. This was truly worthy of being called the Spirit Casting Array Formation. The effects were better than he expected. According to this speed, he would only need to borrow it 2 more times before his soul's absorption speed would recover. At that time, he would be able to open the 3rd road of the divine realm. Looking at the completely silent array formation, Chinyu stepped out. If he could, he would choose to cultivate here without hesitation for several months until he refined all the soul treasures. Unfortunately, the spirit casting array formation itself needed to be maintained every time it was used in order to ensure that it operated normally. All of this was recorded in the jade slip. His journey was smooth. As he left the long passage, a cool night breeze blew past him. At this time, the outside world was filled with stars. Chinyu suddenly stopped. Not too far away, under an octagonal pavilion, there was a soft couch. Lei Xiaoyu was leaning against it, her eyes closed as if she had fallen into a deep sleep. The 2 maids stood guard at her side. When Chinyu looked over, they had already sensed it and hesitated. Chinyu lifted a hand, preventing them from waking up Lei Xiaoyu. He said in a soft voice, "Why is she here?" A maid bowed. "Greetings, Sir Qin. Ever since you entered, the Miss has been guarding here. She has never left." Qin Yu was silent for a moment. Then he turned and sat down. He looked at the sleeping Lei Xiaoyu. She seemed to be having a good dream, a faint smile hanging on her lips. The 2 maids glanced at each other and quietly withdrew from the pavilion, giving the 2 of them some space to be alone. After quietly looking at Lei Xiaoyu's sleeping appearance, Chinyu closed his eyes. A thought fluctuation crossed through space. A moment later, the little blue lamp's response echoed in his mind. "I know what you want to say, but my response remains the same. Saving her is far too difficult. If you insist on helping me, I will refuse." Chinyu asked, "Is there no other possibility?" "In fact, there are many ways to save her. But besides me helping her, the simplest is to obtain an original god body. Are you sure you want me to tell you another method?" "There's no need." Chinyu sighed. He cut off the connection and opened his eyes to look at Lei Xiaoyu, slowly suppressing the great waves in his heart. It wasn't that he didn't want to, but that his abilities were limited. Unknowingly, a night passed. When sunlight sprinkled down, Lei Xiaoyu opened her eyes. The moment she saw Chinyu, a smile bloomed on her face. "Big brother Qin." Chinyu smiled. "I saw that you were sleeping soundly last night, so I didn't wake you up. The soul forging array formation will need to be maintained these next 2 days. Is there anywhere you want to go?" Lei Xiaoyu nodded. "Yes, but Big Brother Qin, don't you need to rest?" Chinyu said, "I already rested last night. If you don't have any questions, let's go." The place Lei Xiaoyu wanted to go to was a quiet bamboo forest. It was in the southwest corner of the City Lord Mansion, in a remote courtyard. This courtyard was called the Bamboo Room. It was clean, but it couldn't hide the desolate atmosphere. It was clear no one had lived here for a long time. Qin Yu was a bit puzzled. Why did Lei Xiaoyu want to come here? He swept out with his divine sense. It was an ordinary courtyard with nothing special about it. "All right, this is the place. Big Brother Qin, follow me." Lei Xiaoyu held her hands behind her back and smiled. She pushed open the door and walked in. What followed was a stroll through the courtyard. Lei Xiaoyu walked in front, bringing Qinyu to every place. She opened every door. Even if she didn't go in, she still had to let Qinyu take a look. The courtyard wasn't too large. Even though they were talking and walking, it took them almost an hour. Qinyu didn't feel impatient at all. He could feel that Lei Xiaoyu was happy walking through this place, and that was enough for him. The last place was the bamboo forest they saw before. Lei Xiaoyu didn't care that her hands were covered in mud. She personally dug out several fresh bamboo shoots. "All right, Big Brother Qin, let's go. You're in luck today. My stir-fried bamboo shoots are top-notch." Qinyu smiled. "Then I'll wait and see." After washing his hands and putting away the bamboo shoots, the two of them walked to the entrance. Lei Xiaoyu suddenly stopped. She turned and put her hand to her mouth, loudly saying, "Mother, his name is Qinyu. He is my friend. I brought him to see you today. I hope you'll be satisfied." After speaking, she didn't look at Qinyu. She blushed and quickly walked forwards. Qinyu was silent for a moment. Then he cupped his hands together and bowed towards the courtyard entrance. Reality proved that Lei Xiaoyu wasn't lying. Her cooking skills were unexpectedly good, especially the crisp and refreshing bamboo shoots. Qinyu gave her a thumbs up as he ate them. Across from him, Lei Xiaoyu only gently smiled. She helped Qinyu set out the dishes and poured wine for him. She only occasionally ate 1 or 2 bites. After she finished eating, she didn't allow the maids to help. She personally cleaned up and placed a plate of fruit on the table. She smiled and said, "Big Brother Qin, thank you for helping me fulfill a small wish. I didn't tell you before that the bamboo room was where my mother lived because I was afraid you would feel uncomfortable." Qinyu shook his head. He thought for a moment and asked, "Auntie she?" Lei Xiaoyu said she died when I was 5 years old. She lifted a hand and wiped her eyes. She smiled and said, "Afterwards, the bamboo room was sealed off. It was only after I came of age last year that I had it cleared out. So, the introduction I gave you before was in truth something I heard from others. Many of my childhood memories are already blurry." Qinyu said, "I'm sorry, that pair of puppets was left behind by Auntie?" Lei Xiaoyu nodded. "That's right. That was the only thing she gave me. But I wasn't careful and lost it. So, I really must thank Big Brother Qin for helping me find it." "Qin, you changed the topic. Is there anything else you want to do?" Lei Xiaoyu tilted her head. "Yes." Her face blushed red. "Tomorrow, my big brother is holding a banquet to entertain an honored guest from afar. He will invite many people. Big Brother Qin, you know how much my father loves me, and I'm also at this age, so every time there's a banquet, there are always many people that run over to annoy me if possible. I hope you can attend with me." Chapter 9:11. As it turned out, it wasn't easy to be a qualified shield. Seeing Lei Xiaoyu's eyes widen with excitement, Qinyu felt a moment of regret. Should he reconsider? Before he could think of a reason to decline, he was pulled away by Lei Xiaoyu. Then, Qinyu began an incomparably complex and torturous journey. There were a few times when he wanted to retreat, but he was defeated by Lei Xiaoyu's stare. In the end, he simply closed his eyes and did not look at her. His clothes were fine. It was an expressionless old woman. She reached out and measured Qinyu's body a few times. She whispered something to Lei Xiaoyu and then turned to look at Qinyu. The boots were also custom-made. Qinyu really couldn't stand this. He glared at the enchanting man who was trying to flatter his feet and measured the size himself. Originally, Qinyu thought that hairstyle design was the most complicated, but later he found that he was wrong. The real trouble was the bath. Qinyu could guarantee that in his life he had never taken such a complicated bath before. From head to toe, it took him over half a day. If it were not for the guilt he felt, he would definitely have flipped out. It was only Lei Xiaoyu. If it were anyone else, he would definitely not entertain them. Qin Yu had never felt a day pass so slowly before. He changed into the newly made boots and robes and hung up the accessories Lei Xiaoyu had prepared. As he stood in front of the mirror, he finally understood why some female cultivators would rather spend a great deal of time grooming themselves. At the very start, Qin Yu was extremely handsome, but as his cultivation rose, he constantly adjusted himself to perfection. And most importantly, after he achieved the ancient, undying body, every move he made emitted an endless masculine charm. In addition, within his soul space, the existence of the sun and moon force field gave him the qualifications to transcend worldly matters. Even though this aura was hidden, it still caused his temperament to undergo a massive change. Originally, this aura was not very obvious, but after Lei Xiaoyu's torment, this aura was clearly magnified. Most importantly, it was confidence. Even if he was in Rock City, even if he had to face Lei Qianjun head-on, Qin Yu was confident that he could escape unscathed. It was precisely because of this that his back was straight like a pine tree, and his gaze was steady and firm, causing his handsomeness to rise once more. All in all, he was so handsome. With a little more makeup, the young man in the mirror was simply too handsome. Qin Yu subconsciously rubbed his chin. The eyes of the several maids beside him began to blur as their hearts flashed. Lei Xiaoyu gently bit her lips and mumbled, "If I had known this would happen, I wouldn't have made you look so pretty." Who knows who would attract more attention at the banquet? However, after some hesitation, she gave up on the idea of making Qin Yu uglier. She thought to herself, "I'm Lei Xiaoyu. Would anyone dare to snatch a man from me in my house?" Lei Jinyin's banquet was held as scheduled. The status of the eldest son of the first wife was high enough to use the resources of the city lord's mansion. Whether it was the venue or the scale, it was first class. All the invited guests had dressed up early to express their respect to the eldest son of the first wife. Of course, there were many people amongst them that didn't only have this single thought. For example, the few young geniuses that were gathered within the hall and were chatting happily. It was not flattery. The few young people who were qualified to be invited to the banquet today were true dragons and phoenixes among men. Regardless of birth, background, aptitude, or character, they were all outstanding. Now that he was talking and laughing freely, it was truly eye-catching. Lei Jinyin arrived with his wife Guwan. As he swept his eyes over the group of young people, his eyes brightened. He lowered his head and gave them a look of praise. He suddenly understood the ingenuity of today's banquet. Even if he didn't do anything, as long as Lei Xiaoyu and Qin Yu appeared, they would be able to spark a conflict. As long as they stirred up a storm, then, as the host of the banquet, he would have a chance to guide things in the direction he hoped for. He raised his cup and drank with the several young geniuses. Lei Jinyin was all smiles. Both sides spoke happily, attracting the attention of countless people. Guwan stood beside her husband, a warm and graceful smile on her face. Lei Jinyin was the strongest competitor for the throne in the future, and these young people in front of her each represented a force behind them. When both sides stood together, even if they didn't actually communicate, this in itself was a kind of signal. And this signal would certainly be released through today's banquet. After it was magnified, it would be known by all those who were interested. Then this would imperceptibly increase Lei Jinyin's status and weight. This was also a general trend that could be borrowed. Of course, this was only the beginning. Today's true climax had yet to arrive. She would help Lei Jinyin officially establish his position. But what happened next proved that the climax of today's banquet would arrive much earlier than the hostess had expected. When Lei Xiaoyu and Qin Yu appeared at the entrance to the grand hall, all eyes that fell on them froze for a moment. Qin Yu's heaven-shatteringly handsome appearance had already been mentioned before. It was inevitable that the eyes of all the female cultivators in the grand hall brightened. But what was even more attractive was Lei Xiaoyu. She was beautiful to begin with, and now that she had put in a great deal of effort, she was as dazzling as a pearl. In particular, she wore a long dress that was mainly red. It was exquisitely cut and decorated, accentuating her incomparably noble temperament. There was even a faint hint of happiness in her. That's right, happiness. Her gaze then fell onto Chinyu. He was wearing a black robe decorated with silver cloud patterns, and his aura was unexpectedly compatible with Lei Xiaoyu's. Even though there was some distance between the two of them, anyone who wasn't blind would know that they were a pair. The young geniuses gathered together, speaking calmly and naturally. All of them frowned. Why did they dress up so meticulously and attend today's banquet in such a pristine state? Although they didn't say it explicitly, everyone was clear in their hearts. The little princess of the city, Lord's residence, was Lei Qianjuan's most beloved daughter. Even if she couldn't inherit the throne in the future, she would still be a supreme noble. If they could marry such a woman, not only would their family's wealth be guaranteed, but they would also be able to rise several levels. But now, before they could even make a move, the scene in front of them had appeared. What was the meaning of this? Was this a show in front of them, or was it a demonstration? Many people looked at Chinyu with cold and unkind eyes. They didn't believe that this was Lei Xiaoyu's idea. They believed that Chinyu had done it on purpose and was warning them not to have such thoughts. Humph. Interesting, truly interesting. Not long ago, Lei Qianjun had given Chinyu the same label. But in the eyes of these young geniuses, this interesting had a different meaning. But sneering in their hearts was just sneering. Lei Xiaoyu and Qinyu's appearance was too imposing. For a time, no one had the courage to step forward. Just like that, the atmosphere in the grand hall turned from warm to heavy. Lei Jinyun frowned. As the host of today's banquet, it would be a joke if Lei Xiaoyu stole the show in her own home. Restraining his emotions, he smiled and walked forward. "Little sister, is this the friend you brought back to the residence? He is indeed a talented man." A talented man was indeed a compliment, but in this situation it had a different meaning when it fell into the ears of the crowd. For example, relying on one's face to make a living. To be more direct, a pretty boy. Many eyes swept over Lei Jinyun's affectionate smile. They secretly thought that today's banquet wasn't simple at all. The young geniuses who had slightly unnatural expressions immediately became calm and gentle. They looked over with smiles, their gazes condescending. The atmosphere in the grand hall changed again. Gu Wan let go of Lei Jinyun's arm and welcomed her with a smile. "Little sister, you're finally here. Sister-in-law has a few close friends who want to get to know you. Come with me." As she spoke, she nodded towards Chinyu. "Sir Qin, today's banquet has gathered elites from all over the world. There is no harm in making a few more friends. Perhaps it will be helpful in the future." In this sort of situation, after Gu Wan expressed her stance, Lei Xiaoyu couldn't refuse. Even if she was dissatisfied with her brother and sister-in-law's actions, she couldn't leave behind the impression that the Lei family was in discord. Glancing at Chinyu, she smiled and nodded. "Then I'll have to trouble sister-in-law." Chinyu was left speechless. As a shield, he hadn't even done anything yet, and it seemed he was about to lose his job. However, he soon discovered that even though he had left Lei Xiaoyu's side, he seemed to be starting to play a role. 1, 2, 3 from all directions, there were hidden gazes looking at him. There were many curious ones and several female cultivators who were sizing him up with anger. However, the ones with the most power were obviously the few young men who had gathered together. They were all good-looking and well-mannered. Were these the people that Lei Xiaoyu had been talking about, the ones that always annoyed her at banquets? They seemed quite good. No one imagined that at this time, Chinyu was actually in the mood to criticize others. If he wanted to deal with someone, he didn't need to directly target them. Sometimes ignoring them was the most powerful slap to the face. This was especially true in such a lively banquet venue. Thus, When Lei Xiaoyu was brought along by Gu Wan and caught up in the flattery of a group of women, the gazes that glanced at Qin Yu began to withdraw and resume their previous conversations. Even in the grand hall, there were several young ladies that were usually bold and unconstrained. Although they were very interested in Qin Yu and didn't mind learning more about him, they still wisely chose to maintain their silence. Of those that had the qualifications to stand here, there was no one without brains. They all had the ability to control themselves. Thus, Qin Yu became a transparent person. As he stood in the lively and luxurious banquet hall, he seemed completely out of tune with everything around him. In truth, Qin Yu really didn't care about any of this. Because of his disguise, he had already wasted an entire day. Now he was happy to have some peace and quiet so that he could think about some problems related to cultivation. So he took a cup of wine and found a seat in a corner of the hall. Like this, he sat down in silence. After thinking for a while, he would frown if there was anything that didn't go through his mind. Then he would raise his cup and take a sip. Qin Yu's mind didn't scatter, but as this scene fell into the eyes of those around him, there was a different meaning to it. Many people looked at each other, a thoughtful look in their eyes. But some people had already reacted. Although they were giving Qin Yu the cold shoulder, this boy wasn't much to begin with. But he had been brought here by Lei Xiaoyu. To give him the cold shoulder was the same as sweeping away Lei Xiaoyu's face. Although everyone believed that Lei Jinyan had the highest chance of inheriting the throne, nothing was absolute. It was better to be cautious. Why would they offend Lei Xiaoyu over some minor matter? But before they could act, Lei Xiaoyu coldly interrupted a woman in front of her. "Sorry, excuse me." Ignoring Gu Wan's frozen expression, she turned and returned to Qin Yu's side, an apologetic look in her eyes. She said in a low voice, "Big brother Qin, this banquet is very boring. Let's go first." "Ah." Qin Yu looked up at her. "Xiaoyu, what did you say?" Lei Xiaoyu discovered that Qin Yu really hadn't heard her clearly. A strange expression crossed her face. "Big brother Qin, what are you doing?" Qin Yu stood up. "I'm thinking about some problems related to cultivation. To tell the truth, I'm not used to today's occasion. Well, it's just a waste of time." After enduring for a while, he still said what was on his mind. Lei Xiaoyu didn't know whether to laugh or to cry. Everyone at the banquet was staring at her. She couldn't stand it any longer. But the result was that Qin Yu was thinking about cultivation alone. From start to finish, it seemed that he hadn't been paying attention at all. Although the situation wasn't right, she still couldn't help but smile. She thought that this was truly her big brother Qin. If these people knew, wouldn't they vomit blood from depression? "What is it?" No, hearing Qin Yu's words, she really wanted to laugh. Lei Xiaoyu struggled to hold it in. She said, "I think it's very boring. How about we leave first?" Qin Yu didn't have any objections. "Let's go." The two of them turned and walked away. Lei Jinyan was in a difficult situation. Anyone who saw Lei Xiaoyu's actions would know that she was expressing her dissatisfaction. She wasn't giving her big brother any face at all. If he let these two leave like this, then losing face was inevitable. All of his preparations today would have been meaningless. Xiaoyu. Chapter 9:12. Lei Jinyan took a deep breath, speaking slowly. Today's banquet is to invite the new elder of the Wu family, Wu Daoyuan. The host and guest haven't arrived yet. If you leave like this, it will be impolite. Lei Xiaoyu said, "My health hasn't been good since I was a child. My father allowed me to attend fewer banquets like this. I think elder will understand if I leave early." "Xiaoyu." Lei Jinyan frowned. Before he could say more, laughter came from outside the hall. "I'm passing by Prung City today. I'm sorry to disturb young master and madam." Before his voice faded away, a cultivator dressed like a Taoist walked in. He looked like he was in his 30s with a long beard. This man had a smile in his eyes and a warm demeanor. He looked like an immortal. Lei Jinyan stepped forward, clasping his hands to greet him. Elder Wu, it's been 13 years since we last met. Congratulations on breaking through the bottleneck and opening the God Realm's great path. According to common customs, only the cultivators who had condensed more than 5 divine seals could be called the Great Path, which meant that their future was limitless. In today's occasion, Lei Jinyin wouldn't casually speak. If he said so, then Wu Daoyuan in front of him must be in existence with more than 5 divine seals. Everyone in the banquet was in awe. In the world of cultivators, only the unchanging power represented the supreme position. 5 or more divine seals were enough to prove Wu Daoyuan's intimidation. Such a character must have endured for many years, waiting for his accumulation to be strong enough to break through to the God Realm. After such an existence entered the God Realm, his cultivation base would increase fast. After 100 years, he would become a famous expert. Besides that, the most important thing was that Wu Daoyuan had the qualification to break through to the original God Realm. The original God Realm represented the supreme existence in this world. It was qualified to stand above the 9 skies and observe billions of creatures in this world. Greetings, Elder Wu. Everybody bowed to greet him, their faces respectful. Wu Daoyuan laughed and waved his hand. No need. Please rise. His eyes fell on Lei Xiaoyu, his smile brighter. As young master said, I came to the city master palace 13 years ago. I saw you at that time. I didn't expect that you would become a young lady in just a blink of an eye. Time doesn't wait for people. Lei Xiaoyu bowed. Xiaoyu greets, Elder Wu. Wu Daoyuan smiled and lifted his palm. Light flashed and a lotus flower appeared. This lotus flower is quite interesting. I obtained it by accident. Today, I will give it to you as a gift for your coming of age. Since that was the case, there was no way she could refuse. Lei Xiaoyu expressed her gratitude and received the lotus with both hands. The moment it touched her palm, it disappeared without a trace. Then, a faint lotus mark appeared on the back of her hand. After sensing for a moment, Lei Xiaoyu's expression turned solemn. She bowed once more. Thank you, Elder Wu. Many people were envious. Since Lei Xiaoyu was like this, it was obvious that this lotus was no ordinary item. However, they were just envious for a while. They didn't think that they had the face to get a greeting gift from Wu Daoyuan. When the main guests arrived, the banquet officially began. Although it was a buffet banquet, a few of the main dishes had just been served. All kinds of rare delicacies were placed on the soft, snow-white tablecloth. The air was filled with a tantalizing aroma. Having just received a very valuable gift, Lei Xiaoyu couldn't leave. She turned and gave Qin Yu an apologetic look. He had come to accompany her to begin with, so Qin Yu didn't mind staying a bit longer. In addition, there were also the delicacies that had just been served. They tasted wonderful, and it wouldn't be a bad idea to try them. Are you hungry? Lei Xiaoyu was stunned as she heard Qin Yu speak. In this sort of setting, everyone was mostly chatting. There weren't many people who would actually eat. But at this time, when Qin Yu said this, he gave off a righteous feeling. I'm eating the sea dragon over there. This is the most precious thing. Today is a grand banquet for outsiders. Normally, I might not be able to eat it every day. Lei Xiaoyu pulled Qin Yu towards the table. Then, many people in the hall couldn't help but glance over at the man and woman eating and drinking to their heart's content. If it was just Qin Yu, then that was fine. After all, he was just an ordinary boy without any background. It was normal for him to not be able to stop eating when he saw something good. But with Lei Xiaoyu's status, what hadn't she eaten before? Was there a need to be like this? Really, just looking at these two, even if he wasn't hungry, he would still be drooling. Lei Jinyin and Gu Wan represented the city lord mansion and conversed with Wu Daoyuan, both sides happily chatting. At this time, the young elites that had been silent for a long time glanced at each other. One of them stepped forwards and bowed. Junior Kong Chi of Rock City greets, Elder Wu. Wu Daoyuan smiled and nodded. Seeing this, Kong Chi was filled with confidence. He continued to say, "Juniors have long heard that the Black Marsh Wu family has a supernatural secret skill called Miracle Hand's Emptiness. It is a top-class technique in the world. I wonder if Senior can demonstrate it so that we juniors can broaden their horizons." The hall immediately fell silent. Many people's eyes brightened and they revealed looks of anticipation. Wu Daoyuan waved his hand. "It's just a minor technique that can't be shown in public. It isn't worthy of such praise." Several more young elites stepped forwards and bowed together. "I ask Elder Wu to give us a chance." Wu Daoyuan hesitated. Guan smiled. "Uncle Wu, since everyone is so cordially inviting you, how about you demonstrate a little?" She blinked. "I know the rules of Miracle Hand's Emptiness. If you fail, you must show some sincerity." Wu Daoyuan shook his head and smiled. "Forget it. Since everyone is curious, I will show you my incompetence." He thought for a moment. With a flip of his hand, he took out another lotus flower, one identical to the one he gave Lei Xiaoyu. "I happened to obtain a strange treasure not long ago. 2 lotus flowers can be used as supplementary items. They aren't bad toys, so I'll use them to liven things up." At this point, Wu Daoyuan glanced at Lei Xiaoyu and said with a smile, "There's one thing that I would like to remind everyone out of friendship. The 2 lotuses in my hands can be fused, and the effect will be even better." With his eyesight, he only needed a few glances to roughly guess the situation in the hall. These words clearly had a hidden meaning. Many people's eyes brightened. When Wu Daoyuan took out the lotus flower, they already thought that if they could obtain it, they would have the same mark as Lei Xiaoyu. But now, only an idiot would use it themselves. If they were lucky enough to win, they would immediately give it to Lei Xiaoyu and take the chance to express their sincerity. At the very least, they would be able to leave a good impression that could be used in the future. Wu Daoyuan walked to the center of the hall. The crowd automatically spread out and formed a circle. He smiled. "Who wants to be the first? I was the one who suggested this first, so of course I won't give way." Kong Chi cupped his hands and stepped into the field. Wu Daoyuan said, "Little friend, do you know the rules?" Kong Chi said, respectfully, "Everyone in the world knows about miraculous hand emptiness. I've heard the elders in my family mention it. Elder Wu, you may begin." Wu Daoyuan nodded. With a flick of his sleeve, he took out an incense burner with a hair-thin stick of sandalwood burning at a visible speed. "To ensure fairness, I will set a limit. Whoever can last until the sandalwood burns out will be the winner." As he finished speaking, he lifted his hand and a strange scene appeared. There was no trace of aura, but the area below his forearm suddenly disappeared as if he had entered an invisible passage. On the other side, Kong Chi growled as if he was facing a great enemy. His aura erupted, causing the air to explode. Fortunately, he had compressed all his energy into a circle around him. Otherwise, the banquet would be ruined. "Good. After not seeing you for some time, Brother Kang's cultivation has improved yet again. It looks like fellow Taoist Kang's road to the divinity realm will soon be opened. Humph humph. I think Kong Chi has already opened his road to the divinity realm. He's just suppressing it, so he can't make a breakthrough. This boy has truly hidden himself deeply. I fear he has already made up his mind to amaze the world with a single brilliant feat today." With loud shouts, everyone's eyes focused on Kong Chi. Soon, before the sandalwood had burned down more than half, Wu Daoyuan drew back his hand. A jade pendant appeared between his fingers. "Little friend Kong, thank you for letting me win." Kong Chi's eyes widened in disbelief. Although he didn't speak, everyone already knew the result. Bang! There were loud shouts in the hall. Although they had heard of the Wu family's miraculous hand emptiness, it was only today that they realized he was even more mysterious and unfathomable than the rumors made him out to be. They could clearly see that from start to finish, Kong Chi hadn't sensed anything strange at all. If he hadn't taken something, but had instead attacked someone. Thinking of this, many people felt a chill crawl down their backs. Qin Yu paused eating. He raised an eyebrow. This is Miracle Hand, kleptomaniac? Lei Xiaoyu lowered her voice. The Wu family of the Black Swamp. Their ancestors were famous bandits. They used to run away from an original god realm warrior. Later, in order to pass on the family's legacy, the Wu family's ancestor made a solemn vow that he would never take the initiative to attack any forces in the world. The family's disciples relied on a divine skill called the miraculous empty hands to search for secret realms and ruins in the world. It could be said that their wealth was comparable to that of a country. Back then, it was precisely because my father wanted to decipher an ancient domain that he befriended the Wu clan of the Black Marsh. In any case, they have a wide circle of acquaintances, and no one would dare to offend them. Lei Xiaoyu swallowed her following words. But Qin Yu knew just what sort of influence's head had been kicked by a donkey to provoke this Wu family, whose ancestors were all great thieves. As the saying goes, one should not be afraid of a thief stealing from them, but one should be afraid of a thief remembering them. If the Wu clan of the Black Marsh were to really remember them, not many people would be able to sleep well at night. Kong Qi smiled bitterly and bowed. "Thank you for showing mercy, Elder Wu." As he spoke, he retreated into the crowd. Wu Daoyuan smiled. "I cannot make an exception to the rules of my family." As he spoke, he put away the jade pendant. Kong Qi's defeat was within everyone's expectations. If he couldn't even deal with a junior that hadn't even reached the divinity realm, then how could miraculous empty hands have his current reputation? What truly startled them was that Wu Daoyuan had attacked too quickly. It had only been several breaths of time, and Kong Qi hadn't even sensed it. Although they weren't too happy that Kong Qi occupied the first position, they still recognized his strength. If he was so weak, would they be able to perform any better if they went up? "Allow me." A youth stepped onto the stage and cupped his hands together. "I am Rock City's Miao Qiyu. Greetings, Elder Wu." Many people were startled. They looked at the stage with rapt attention. It was clear that this Miao Qiyu had some fame. But unfortunately, facing Wu Daoyuan's miraculous empty hands, he was only able to last 2 breaths of time longer than Kong Qi. Elder Wu's divine skill truly leaves this junior in awe. Miao Qiyu cupped his hands together and bowed. He turned and walked back into the crowd. He had also lost. But compared to Kong Qi, it was clear who was superior. Following that, 3 more Rock City cultivators appeared. Without exception, all of them were defeated. Miraculous empty hands took away an item from them. "Miss Lei, my name is Meng Pingyue, and I come from Qiliang City's Meng family. Although I don't have the slightest confidence in winning today, I am willing to give it a try for you. If I am lucky enough to win, I hope you will accept the lotus." As he finished speaking, he faintly smiled. Without giving Lei Xiaoyu a chance to speak, he strode onto the stage. "Elder Wu, please enlighten me." Meng Pingyue lifted a hand and pointed between his eyebrows. The phantom of a mountain appeared around him. Although it was blurry, it couldn't hide its heavy and solid appearance. Mountain will manifestation. Illusory fusion. With loud shouts, everyone's complexions changed. Wu Daoyuan nodded. "Little friend, your strength isn't bad. Be careful." He lifted a hand and grasped forwards. Half of his arm disappeared. Time slowly passed. Everyone could clearly see the phantom of the mountain around Meng Pingyue. It was like the surface of a lake that was being blown about by a cool breeze, causing ripples to appear. Half of the sandalwood incense had burned, more than half, almost gone. Meng Pingyue's eyes lit up with joy. But at this time, Wu Daoyuan faintly smiled. "Pa!" With a light sound, the phantom of the mountain dissipated. A yellow stone lay quietly between Wu Daoyuan's fingers. Elder Wu's methods have left this junior in awe. Meng Pingyue bowed. He turned and wryly smiled. "Miss Lei, I have disappointed you. I am truly sorry, but as you have seen today, I am willing to do anything for you. Even if I cannot do it, I am willing to give it my all. This boy's ability to say sweet nothings was much stronger than his cultivation. Wu Daoyuan faintly smiled. He decided to end things here today, but at this time his eyebrows furrowed together. Lei Jinyun's heart tightened. Although Gu Wan spoke with confidence, whether or not she succeeded today would depend on this step. After several breaths of time, Gu Wan let out a long breath. She said in a soft voice, he agreed. Lei Jinyun relaxed, and a happy expression appeared on her face. As long as Wu Daoyuan made his move, there was no reason for him to fail. At that time, he could use all of the cards he had prepared. Today, he would use this matter to speak out and let everyone know just who the true successor of the Lei family was. Wu Daoyuan suddenly said, Young man, Miss Lei is like a bright moon in the skies. She will always attract people to chase after her. Do you not plan on doing anything? Shua! Countless eyes gathered on Qinyu. He arched an eyebrow, as if he never thought that something would happen to him today. He thought for a moment and said, Xiaoyu, what about that lotus flower? Lei Xiaoyu bit her lips. It has the effect of retaining one's youth, but I don't know why, but after it fused into me, I felt very comfortable. Chapter 913. The banquet hall fell silent. The two of them didn't conceal their conversation, so everyone could hear it clearly. Then I'll help you get a hiss. This Qinyu, what big words. Just who did he think he was, and what sort of existence would he be facing? And most importantly, with such a casual attitude, didn't that mean that everyone who tried before was trash? How could this be tolerated? Meng Pingyue's eyebrows rose up. He clapped his hands, his face full of praise. You are truly worthy of being someone that Miss Lei favors. Fellow Taoist Qin is truly bold. We will open our eyes wide and watch as fellow Taoist wins. Kang Chi bit his cheeks. Brother Meng's words seemed to lack confidence in fellow Taoist Qin. I do not doubt Miss Lei's judgment. How could someone she favors possibly fail? Ha! Since that's the case, we only need to quietly wait and watch as fellow Taoist Qin takes the lotus flower and presents it to Miss Lei. The higher they praise, the harder they would fall. These geniuses were truly smart people. While praising Qinyu, they didn't forget to mention Lei Xiaoyu. If they ended up making a fool of themselves, she would lose face and her heart would grow distant. Lei Xiaoyu revealed a look of annoyance. She regretted her words just now, but in the current situation, she couldn't say anything. Qinyu smiled. He swept his eyes over the geniuses across from him, all of them hiding a cold intent in their eyes. He lightly said, Then open your eyes wide and watch. Whoosh! Wasn't this a public slap in the face? Even someone as shrewd as Meng Pingyue's complexion changed. No matter how talented they were still youths. Their backgrounds, their talent, and their current achievements made them incomparably proud and arrogant. When had they ever been ridiculed in front of their faces? But at this time no one said anything. In front of the truth, any words were useless. If this Qin you could really obtain the lotus flower, then there was nothing to say about his inferior skills. But if it was just his mouth, did he really think that the words disaster comes from the mouth were only used to scare people? As for whether or not Qin you would win, what he faced now was a Black Marsh Wu family elder who had already broken into the divine realm. He was an absolute powerhouse that had condensed at least 5 divine seals. If he used his divine hand's emptiness, perhaps no one in the divine realm would be able to stop him. Although most of them knew that Qinyu had forced the treasure guard to lower his head and hand over the puppet, none of them believed that he could create another miracle today. After all, the guardian of the treasure might seem mysterious to ordinary people, but it was nothing in their eyes. How could it be compared to the Black Marsh Wu family elder? Wu Daoyuan's eyes fell on Qinyu, a hint of appreciation in them. Disregarding everything else, just this calm and confident demeanor was rare amongst the younger generation. This brat's temperament was somewhat to his liking. How could a person who had painstakingly suppressed his cultivation, accumulated his foundation, and condensed the glory of 5 divine seals be as gentle and polite as he appeared? Wu Daoyuan's chest was filled with pride, but he disdained to show it in front of a group of juniors. What a pity! I hope that today's matter won't deal too much of a blow to him. Inwardly shaking his head, Wu Daoyuan's eyes flashed with a bit more helplessness and sympathy before he composed himself. Little friend Qinyu, I am going to attack. Qinyu cupped his hands together. Elder Wu, please. He lit a new stick of sandalwood and thrust his hand forwards. Without any fluctuations in the air, half of Wu Daoyuan's arm vanished from sight. The grand hall was silent. As time passed, many sneers and mocking gazes began to reveal surprise and doubt. To be able to last until now, Qinyu's strength had surpassed their expectations. Half of the sandalwood had burned, more than half, and it seemed that it would soon reach the end. Meng Pingyue sneered inwardly. He had also reached this step before, but the more he did so, the more he could feel the disparity between them. As long as Wu Daoyuan was just a little bit serious, he could easily break through his defenses. Wu Daoyuan revealed a look of praise. Little friend Qinyu's defensive path is incomparably mysterious. It can completely block out all internal and external energy, leaving me with nowhere to attack. If you and I were at the same boundary, I fear I would have to expend a great deal of effort. But now that I am at the deity realm, I can be considered the strong bullying the weak. He deliberately said these words for everyone to hear. Even if Qinyu was defeated, he would still lose with dignity. This was because Wu Daoyuan had admitted that he had the advantage in cultivation and was bullying the weak. Lei Xiaoyu relaxed. With these words as the foundation, even if Qinyu lost, his performance would still be the best out of everyone present. Even if some people were dissatisfied and wanted to jump out to cause trouble, they wouldn't be able to do so in a righteous manner. It would be much easier to deal with the situation. That's right. Even Lei Xiaoyu thought the same as everyone else at the banquet. She simply didn't think Qinyu could win because the disparity between the two sides was far too great. One was a newly promoted elder of the Wu family who had formed 5 divine seals, and the other was an unknown junior that hadn't yet stepped into the deity realm. There was simply no way to compare them. But the truth was that Qinyu's defense was relaxed, truly relaxed. The sun and moon force field spread out slightly, covering his entire body. It seemed like a thin layer of defense that wasn't too formidable, but only by smashing into it would one know just how hard it was. In truth, Qinyu didn't know either. But thinking about it, it would be easy for Wu Daoyuan to be beaten black and blue. However, Wu Daoyuan had said those words just now. Qinyu thought about it and decided to let him go. Moreover, he was just a little cultivator that hadn't even broken into the deity realm. If he were to throw Wu Daoyuan to the ground in front of everyone, that would inevitably arouse attention. Although he wasn't afraid of it, it was best to avoid trouble. In the eyes of others, this incomparably mysterious and untraceable miraculous hand had no way to hide from Qinyu's senses. He could clearly feel that the strength of his breakthrough had increased by several times. With a thought, a gap appeared in the sun and moon force field around him, just enough for this miraculous hand to pass through across from him. Wu Daoyuan smiled. Just as he was about to take back his hand, his complexion suddenly changed. His casual gaze turned dignified as he swept his eyes over Qinyu's face. He had failed. No, it wasn't a simple failure. Rather, after breaking through the defense, he had instantly lost his senses. Let alone encountering such a situation, even the entire Wu family had never heard of such a thing. Just what sort of method was this? As Wu Daoyuan was secretly startled, Qinyu also couldn't help but be surprised. When he cut off Wu Daoyuan's miraculous hand, he knew that it contained the strength of Wu Daoyuan's divine sense. Now that it had been swallowed up, the taste was no better than being cut by a knife. Yet he didn't have any reaction at all. Just what sort of reasoning was this? The two of them silently looked at each other, but the audience was left panicking. The sandalwood incense was about to burn out, So why hadn't they done anything? If they continued to stare at each other in silence, it would be too late. Just as they were scratching at their hearts, Wu Daoyuan let out a deep breath and drew back his hand. His palm was empty. Little friend Qin Yu's methods are amazing. I admit defeat, so this lotus flower is yours. As he spoke, he took out the lotus flower and flicked his sleeves, delivering it to Qin Yu. The entire banquet hall was suddenly paused. Everyone maintained their previous actions and expressions, as if they had been frozen in the air. With a light cracking sound, a crack appeared in the wine cup in Lei Jinyun's hand. His fingers turned white, and the wine in the cup silently trembled, spilling out through the crack and soaking his sleeves. Gu Wan felt her hand hurt from being held, but she didn't say anything. She only stared at Wu Daoyuan's face, trying to discover his true inner feelings through the subtle changes in his expression. Wu Daoyuan would lose? She absolutely didn't believe this. Was he doing this on purpose because he was dissatisfied? No, that wasn't right. The Black Marsh Wu family's face wouldn't be disregarded because of this. After all, he was a dignified elder of the Wu family. If he lost to a junior that hadn't even reached the divinity realm, that would be a joke. Guwan's thoughts raced. She couldn't figure out where the problem was. But there was one thing that was clear. If Wu Daoyuan admitted defeat, Qin Yu would win. Then all of their preparations would be meaningless. Not just that, but the two of them would become the laughingstock of others. No one here was an idiot. Since the banquet had progressed to this point and Wu Daoyuan had taken the initiative to provoke Qin Yu, it was clear that things weren't simple. If the chicken and eggs were broken in the end, it would increase Qin Yu's reputation and ultimately help Lei Xiaoyu. With this level and ability, he still wanted to inherit the throne? Hurry up and wash up. Thinking of this, Gu Wan looked at Wu Daoyuan with a pleading look in her eyes. She had to know just what was going on. Otherwise, even if Lei Jinyan didn't say anything in the future, she would still lose her current status. Wu Daoyuan sensed something. He glanced at her from the corner of his eyes and then at the audience in the hall. He said in a low voice, "As an elder of the Wu family, I will do my best to protect the Wu family's reputation. Do you all think that I would lie? Little friend Qin Yu has hidden his strength, and I wholeheartedly accept my loss. Everyone, there is no need to continue guessing." Whoosh! This was the final conclusion. Meng Pingyue's eyes widened. Calm? Steady? All of that had been thrown to the dogs. There was only one thought left in his mind. How was this possible? And it wasn't just him. Nearly everyone present had the same thought. But because everyone was present, this matter couldn't be any more real. After all, one person might be hallucinating, but it was impossible for everyone to be hallucinating, right? Qin Yu had won. He had just stood there and hadn't done anything at all? What the hell? Although I believe it, I still think it's too fantastical. Only Qin Yu was as calm as ever. This was because he knew from the start that he would win. He turned and walked over to Lei Xiaoyu's side. He passed the lotus flower to her. Then he turned and asked, "Did you all see clearly?" Shua. With these words, the faces of all the young talents flushed red. But no matter how angry or aggrieved they were, the truth was right in front of them. In the world of cultivators, strength had always reigned supreme. Qin Yu being stronger than them wasn't something they could argue about. So no matter how angry they were, they could only endure it. Otherwise, it would only make the slap in the face even more resounding. Qin Yu smiled. He lowered his voice and winked at the dazed Lei Xiaoyu. "I have always been a man of my word. Since I agreed to be your shield, I will definitely fulfill my duties. Are you satisfied with the results?" At this time, the little blue lamp's thoughts fluctuated. It said in his mind, "Wait a moment." Qin Yu calmly asked, "What is it?" The little blue lamp didn't reply. It paused for several breaths of time and said, "That's right. What you have in your hand is indeed the blue cloud lotus. What a pity. If it could grow for several thousand more years, it should be possible to save her." But right now, it can only allow this girl to live for several more years. Qin Yu tightened his grip on the lotus flower. This lotus flower? The little blue lamp said. No, the true treasure is on Wu Daoyuan's body. When you swallowed his supernatural power just now, his divine sense was tainted with the aura of the blue cloud lotus. Only then did I sense it. What treasure is that? The blue cloud lotus's lotus root. This object grows in the world's filthiest lands, but it can turn yin to yang without being tainted. When it fully matures, it can reshape the mortal body. It can be considered a good treasure. Qin Yu's eyes flashed. His mind returned to the outside world. Xiaoyu, don't be in a daze. Take the lotus flower. He had already reacted. No wonder Lei Xiaoyu had said that after the blue cloud lotus fused into her body, she felt very comfortable. It was likely that this lotus flower had been tainted with the aura of the lotus root. Although he couldn't completely save her, it would still be good if she could live for several more years. What if there was another method in the future? After listening to the little blue lamp, Qin Yu made his decision. He had to obtain the blue cloud lotus root. But how could he do it? His thoughts raced. He swept his eyes over Wu Daoyuan, who was still staring at him. Qin Yu twirled his fingers, and a thought formed in his mind. Lei Jinyin broke the silence. He loudly said, Elder Wu is too serious. We were only surprised, but we didn't dare to doubt you in the slightest. He looked over, a bright smile on his face. In the end, it is my little sister's judgment that is good. It's no wonder that Father has a whole new level of respect for you and agreed to let Qin Yu borrow the soul-forging array formation. Chapter 9:14. Ho! The eldest son of the Lei family was truly fierce. With his attitude today, whether Qin Yu agreed or refused, there would likely be a gap between him and Lei Xiaoyu. Qin Yu had a light expression. If I have time, I will bring Xiaoyu along. Ignoring Lei Jinyun's frozen smile, he suddenly said, Elder Wu, this junior is very interested in your miracle hand vacuity art. I wonder if I could try it again? Everyone's complexions changed. They looked at Qin Yu as if he were a madman. He was using Wu Daoyuan as a treasure-grinding monster. Did he really think he could win? That's right, in everyone's hearts. The reason Qin Yu could win was because of Wu Daoyuan's carelessness. Otherwise, how could a divine realm powerhouse who had condensed 5 divine seals lose to Qin Yu? This was the only reasonable explanation. Well, even if they took a step back and said that this boy Qin Yu really did have some secret on his body that could shield him from the miracle hand vacuity art, disregarding whether or not doing this would thoroughly enrage Wu Daoyuan. Once this matter spread out, it would arouse covetous thoughts. That would be more than enough for him to suffer. Young people, after a moment of success, began to forget the immensity of the heavens and earth. Although the main hall was silent, almost everyone was shouting in their hearts, "Agree to him! Agree!" And among them, the ones shouting the loudest were naturally Lei, Jinyun, and Guan. They originally thought that their plans today had failed and they would become the laughingstock of others, but they never imagined that Qin Yu would court death himself. They couldn't help but feel anticipation in their hearts. Wu Daoyuan revealed a surprised expression. He met Qin Yu's eyes. Although this junior had been showing off his sharpness all this time, the calm look in his eyes indicated that he wasn't the reckless type. Could it be? As his thoughts raced, Wu Daoyuan smiled. Little friend Qin Yu, if you honestly answer a question of mine, perhaps I will agree. Qin Yu said yes. Wu Daoyuan was startled. You know what I want to ask. Qin Yu pointed a finger at the lotus mark on the back of Lei Xiaoyu's hand. Now he was sure. As he thought, Qin Yu had come for the lotus root. Did he know how to use it? To be honest, Wu Daoyuan was a little hesitant. He had only found the azure cloud lotus by chance in a dangerous place. It was not easy to obtain it, even though he hadn't been able to figure out what use the lotus root had. Just the aura it exuded was enough to tell that it was extraordinary. Should he really take it out and give it a try? Wu Daoyuan still didn't have a clue how Qin Yu had cut off Miracle Hand Kleptomaniac's attack just now. If Qin Yu really won, it wouldn't look good on him. However, he was really curious about Qin Yu's methods. Elder Wu, this junior knows that my request is a bit excessive. I'm willing to use this item as the price. Qin Yu turned his hand and light surged in his palm. A crescent-shaped, white fruit appeared in his palm. Just as it appeared, strands of moonlight scattered down from the sky. In the blink of an eye, a crescent moon was formed in the air. Sky moon fruit. Wu Daoyuan said slowly, his eyes bright. The hall was filled with cries of alarm. Everyone's eyes widened. As they looked at Qin Yu's calm face, they were shocked, speechless, as if this was their first time truly understanding him. Where did this nameless person come from? Bah! Search the entire Rock City territory and see if you can find a nameless person that can casually take out a sky moon fruit. As they thought about Qin Yu's performance today and then looked at the sky moon fruit in his palm, many people came to a sudden realization. Pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger, this was absolutely pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger. This Qin Yu definitely had a great background. It was just that they didn't know about it. Wait a minute. If their guess was correct, then Qin Yu suddenly appearing beside Lei Xiaoyu and obtaining Lei Qianjuan's permission to use the soul forging array formation. Was it really as he seemed? *CK. It's terrifying to think about it. Lei Jinyun's eyes twitched and his complexion paled. Great waves rose up in his heart. Just who was Qin Yu? What did his father want to do? Qin Yu wasn't in the mood to care about what the people around him were thinking. He nodded and said, "That's right. As long as Elder Wu agrees to give this junior a chance, then regardless of success or failure, this junior will offer this sky moon fruit with both hands as an apology to Elder." Wu Daoyuan let out a long breath. Little friend is truly generous. This sky moon fruit is precious enough, and I have no reason to refuse. If you win, I will give you what you want. I will not go back on my word. No one knew what sort of riddle they were playing, but it was clear that a great bet was about to begin. The sky moon fruit was precious to begin with. It was a soul treasure, not to mention the one in Qin Yu's hand. It had reached the stage where moonlight appeared and formed a full moon. It wasn't an exaggeration to call it a supreme treasure. Even if a divine realm cultivator were to obtain it, they could refine it and strengthen their soul, making their future road of cultivation much smoother. To use this as a bet, no. To be more precise, to use the sky moon fruit to exchange for a chance to attack was a great bet. Big brother Qin Yu. Lei Xiaoyu's face flushed red, her eyes filled with excitement. Although Qin Yu didn't say it, her intuition told her that everything Qin Yu was doing was for her. This was a top sky moon fruit. Not too long ago, she had seen her father use this as a price to ask the original God realm powerhouse in Outer World Mountain to save her. In terms of quality, it was far inferior to the one in Qin Yu's hand. Qin Yu smiled. "Don't speak too much. Wait here for me to return." He turned and strode onto the stage. He cupped his hands together and said, "Please advise me, Elder Wu." Wu Daoyuan said, "Little friend Qin Yu, the methods you use are mysterious and unfathomable. This time, I will use my full strength and won't hold anything back. You must be careful." As his words fell, his aura changed. It was like a great beast opening its eyes and releasing its true aura. A boundless pressure rolled out in all directions like raging waves. Everyone cried out in alarm and retreated, awe in their eyes. He was truly worthy of being a powerhouse that had condensed 5 divine seals. Even though he had just entered the divine realm, his aura was already so powerful. Slowly lifting a hand, Wu Daoyuan pointed forward. Space fluctuated and his entire arm was swallowed up. Accomplishing this wasn't easy for Wu Daoyuan. His complexion was dignified and his face paled at a speed visible to the naked eye. Although it wasn't obvious, it was enough to show that using the miracle hand Kleptopia had consumed an astonishing amount of energy. Its might was bound to be astonishing. Bang! The space around Chinyu violently shook. At this moment, the feeling he gave off was like a rampaging bull crashing into a mountain. With a dull thumping sound, a faint fluctuation spread out in all directions. Although it was incomparably weak, everyone who felt it felt their souls violently shake. Their chests felt heavy, and black shadows constantly appeared in front of them. Those with weaker cultivations fell to the ground and fainted. Wu Daoyuan stuffily coughed. His body violently shook, and blood flowed out from his nose and mouth. His eyes widened in shock. He originally thought that he had already overestimated Chinyu, but now he discovered that he had underestimated this person in front of him. Miracle Hand Kleptopia was an ancestor of the Wu family. In the past, he had risked his life in a great tomb to obtain a secret art. Because of this, it was incomplete, and he had spent his entire life to barely repair it. Only then was he able to create this mysterious Steel Gate secret art and use it to establish the Black Swamp Wu family. Because it was repaired and mixed in with his own comprehensions, the Wu family cultivators cultivated Miracle Hand Kleptopia. Its abilities and effects varied according to one's understanding of it. What Wu Daoyuan obtained was a superb perception ability. He was able to determine the true strength of the seal based on Miracle Hand Kleptopia. In that brief collision just now, he felt like an ant trying to shake the earth beneath its feet. The disparity was unimaginably great. If it weren't for the defensive strength being slightly retracted at the end, reducing the shaking strength by over half, Wu Daoyuan didn't doubt that he would have fallen to the ground and spat out blood. At this moment, no one was more convinced than Wu Daoyuan that Chinyu's background was astonishing and that he was someone with a great background. Such an existence, and yet the eldest son of the Lei family wanted to use him as a breakthrough point to attack Lei Xiaoyu's strength. That was simply laughable. He hadn't even investigated Chinyu's identity, and yet he had rashly attacked. If Lei Qianjun learned of Chinyu's identity, then Lei Jinyan would lose a great deal of face. Wu Daoyuan took a deep breath and suppressed his tumbling thoughts. He cupped his hands together and said, "Fellow Taoist Chinyu has won. I wholeheartedly accept my loss." He lifted his hand and took out a pure purple jade box. Countless tiny runes were carved onto its surface. At first glance, it didn't seem to have any order to it, but it was actually a miniature version of a formidable sealing array formation. The energy contained within the jade box was used as a driving force to isolate the aura within from leaking out. He waved his hand and opened the box. A white lotus root appeared in front of everyone. It was pure white like jade without the least bit of impurities. As soon as it appeared, it emitted a fragrance that caused everyone who smelled it to feel an irrepressible desire in their hearts. It was like someone that was starving to death had finally found food. This sort of impatience and determination could nearly destroy one's sanity. Bang! An aura suddenly erupted. Not too far away, a cultivator held forwards. He shouted, "Give it to me! Give it to me!" Wu Daoyuan frowned and coldly coughed. The cultivator cried out miserably and fell to the ground as if he had been slapped down by an invisible hand. What happened next was even more unexpected. The cultivator that Wu Daoyuan had suppressed began to rapidly shrink, turning into a white opium. That's an opium spy. It's someone from the Su family. He was actually swapped out. The Su family is in big trouble. Everyone in the hall was startled awake. They drew backwards, awe in their eyes. For this opium to be able to hide until now and even smoothly infiltrate into the city lord mansion, it was clear just how strong it was. But in front of Wu Daoyuan, it was as weak as a baby, without any ability to resist at all. But even such a Wu Daoyuan hadn't been able to break through Chinyu's defenses, even after attacking with all his strength. Instead, he had been shaken and injured, and he had to lower his head and admit defeat. Just how strong was he? So, the awe in their eyes was only 30% towards Wu Daoyuan. The rest was on Chinyu, or perhaps They were all of some unknown trump card in Qin Yu's hands. If it was the former, then everyone would naturally lower their heads and admit defeat. It wouldn't matter if you slapped them in the face, and if you really wanted to vent your anger, you could slap them left or right. But if it was the latter, they could only hope that Qin Yu's background was strong enough. Otherwise, if he had some trump card that could crush the Black Swamp Wu family's miracle hand emptiness, that would be enough to stir up a storm. Humans cultivated the flesh manifestation art and snuck into the opium weave. To return the favor, it was only natural that the other side would send a spy in. Wu Daoyuan originally had some strength left over, but as he spat out his strength, the struggling opium cried out miserably and fainted. He casually tossed it to the side. It was just an opium spy. It wasn't anything at all. Rock City would deal with it. Elder, please accept the Sky Moon fruit. The lotus root is here. If there is nothing wrong, then I will leave it to fellow Taoist. Wu Daoyuan was an incomparably proud person. So, even though he had determined that Qin Yu's true identity was extraordinary, he couldn't immediately change his attitude. Thus, his expression stiffened. And this slight stiffness in Lei Jinyan's eyes had a completely new interpretation. Wu Daoyuan was truly angry. Logically speaking, as a newly promoted elder of the Wu family and a powerhouse that had formed 5 divine seals, he indeed had the motive to be angry after being repeatedly humiliated by Qin Yu today. However, because he feared Qin Yu's identity, he forcefully suppressed his anger. As the eldest son of the City Lord Mansion, Lei Jinyan's authority was high enough. He had looked through the information on Qin Yu and knew him like the back of his hand. There was a maid at his side who seemed to have a bit of cultivation, and there were also 2 servants that were as weak as ants. Qin Yu simply didn't have any background. The fact that he had repeatedly sought out the nunnery and mixed in with the crowd to listen to the lectures was the best evidence. Thus, Lei Jinyan believed that this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. As long as he gave Wu Daoyuan a sufficient warning, Qin Yu's fate would be miserable. Taking a step back, even if Wu Daoyuan didn't do anything, there were many others that would be interested in Qin Yu's secrets. In short, Qin Yu was finished. No one could save him, and at that time his beloved little sister would also be implicated. It was a perfect counterattack. Suppressing the excitement in his heart, Lei Jinyan stepped forwards and shouted, "Xiaoyu, you've gone too far!" He believed that his beloved little sister across from him would understand his meaning. This little girl was intelligent to begin with. It was just that she was good at pretending to be simple and naive. In these past years, she had caused him to suffer a great deal. Chapter 9:15. When the blue cloud lotus root appeared, Lei Xiaoyu looked at it and smelled the fragrance it emitted. She felt incomparably relaxed and happy. Although she didn't know what use this lotus root had, Lei Xiaoyu believed that if she could obtain it, her harvests would be tremendous. As for Qin Yu, he must have already known that Wu Daoyuan had this treasure on him. Thus his previous actions, it really was for her. It was just that the price of doing so was far too great. If he didn't handle it well, it might even endanger his life. Lei Xiaoyu could not allow such a situation to occur. She took a deep breath and smiled. Big brother is right. I was the one who didn't think things through. She turned and said, "Big brother Qin, I'm very happy that you did this, but the lotus root is far too precious. I cannot accept it, so please return it to Elder Wu." Everyone in the hall was stunned. Just what was going on? But there were also those with sharp minds that revealed excitement in their eyes. Lei Jinyan suddenly said, Lei Xiaoyu had chosen to back down and wanted Qin Yu to return the lotus root and even give up on the Sky Moon fruit. Then there was only one possibility. Qin Yu couldn't afford to offend Wu Daoyuan. If he really took the lotus root, there would be great trouble for him. Wait a little longer. If things were as they guessed, then Lei Jinyan would definitely continue. Since she had grasped such a good chance to reverse the situation, how could she give up? And indeed, just as Lei Xiaoyu's voice fell, Lei Jinyan cupped his hands together and said, Elder Wu, today my little sister was naughty and mischievous. I ask that you don't take offense. The bet is not valid, so please take back the treasure. He believed that with Wu Daoyuan's intelligence, he would definitely be able to understand the deeper meaning behind his words. Qin Yu is just a paper tiger. Don't hold yourself back. If you want to be angry, then be angry. If you want to attack, then attack. If you can kill him, then that would be for the best. Even with Wu Daoyuan's shrewdness, he was stunned. He looked at the apologetic Lei Jinyan and thought that this was the standard of the Lei family's eldest son. It was just too weak. If it weren't for your father being so fierce, I really would want to crack open your skull and see just what's inside. Because he had not expected Lei Jinyan to do this, Wu Daoyuan was in a daze. Then, before he could react, the people in the hall all let out a sigh of relief. This breath was long and heavy, as if a heavy burden had been lifted off their backs. Everyone straightened their backs, and their eyes became sharp once more. As they looked at Qin Yu, a playful smile appeared on their faces. Yo! Even at this time, he still had a calm look on his face. His eyes did not even tremble. Little brother's mental speed was very strong. It was a pity that although a paper tiger looked big and scary, it could easily poke a hole in it with just a finger. He had offended Wu Daoyuan and also exposed his hidden cards. As long as this day passed, he would become the target of public criticism. At that time, even Lei Xiaoyu would not be able to protect him. TSK, sure enough, it felt good to be in the limelight for a moment. Turning around, he went into the mass grave. Who knew where this young man had gotten his luck and felt that he could explode the heavens? Now he had lit himself up. Lei Xiaoyu's face paled. She had a pleading look in her eyes as she looked at Lei Jinyan and bowed. Big brother, today was just a misunderstanding. Misunderstanding? Lei Jinyan had no expression. Little sister, the person you brought doesn't know the rules at all. Elder Wu is an honored guest that your sister-in-law and I have invited. So how can he be neglected? She flicked her sleeves, her voice even colder. Qin Yu, what are you hesitating for? Immediately exchange the treasure with Elder Wu. Wu Daoyuan regained his composure. As he heard these words, his face turned green. Lei Jinyan, you are an idiot, so why are you dragging me along? Hold on. With a loud shout, everyone in the hall felt their hearts shake. They thought that it was coming, it was finally coming. Listening to this voice, no matter how much they tried to maintain their composure, they could still clearly feel the anger within. Wu Daoyuan finally reacted. He was a dignified elder of the Black Swamp Wu family, a powerhouse that had condensed 5 divine seals, and yet he had been frightened by a nobody. This was simply shameful to the extreme. This surnamed Qin brat was finished. Even if he wasn't finished today, he would be finished tomorrow. To be able to resist emptiness's hidden cards, let alone anything else. Just this point alone was enough to make the Black Swamp Wu family unwilling to give up. Be angry, erupt. Lei Jinyun's fingers trembled with excitement. In a short period of time, several thoughts flashed through his mind. Borrowing Wu Daoyuan's anger as a turning point, he was confident he could completely extinguish Lei Xiaoyu's arrogance and let everyone see just who the future of Rock City was. Lei Xiaoyu's complexion paled. She could already see what was about to happen, but from start to finish, her eyes were filled with determination. No matter what price she had to protect Qin Yu. Father, yes, she could ask her father to step forward, everything would be fine. But first, she had to help Qin Yu cross today's calamity. She couldn't allow Wu Daoyuan to erupt here. She met Wu Daoyuan's gaze and took a deep breath. Then she slowly said, Elder Wu, I can understand what you are feeling right now, but Qin Yu is someone I like. In the future, there is a chance that he will become a son-in-law of the Lei family. Today he made a mistake, and I apologize to you on his behalf. I hope that Elder Wu can be magnanimous and magnanimous. Xiaoyu will remember this favor. This was the first time that this young girl had revealed her deepest thoughts to the public. Lei Jinyan angrily shouted, Xiaoyu, don't speak nonsense. Remember your status. Good, this was really good. Lei Xiaoyu had jumped out on her own initiative. Following this, he would be able to attack to his heart's content. Elder Wu, I apologize to you on behalf of my little sister. She has been spoiled by her father since she was a child. I hope that you don't mind. In the grand hall, some people looked at Lei Xiaoyu with disappointed eyes. She was indeed a woman, a creature that was more emotional than rational. In such a situation, she still tried to protect Qinyu. If she was so unwise, how could she inherit the throne? Perhaps in the future, she should try to approach the side of the eldest son. Today's matter was likely to be the true watershed in the struggle for the future successor of Rock City. She had actually confessed to him in front of everyone. Qinyu's eyes flashed. After a moment of surprise, a warm feeling rose in his chest. It seemed he had really frightened her. But it had to be said that Lei Xiaoyu's words and actions really did seem a bit dignified. Qinyu smiled inwardly and didn't say anything. He only looked at Wu Daoyuan, a faint smile in his eyes. Wu Daoyuan, who had been left dumbfounded by the series of wonderful performances in the grand hall, regained his composure as Qinyu looked at him. Then he cursed inwardly. Leave. He had to hurry and leave. He couldn't stay in this place any longer. Taking a deep breath, Wu Daoyuan squeezed out a smile. He said in the warmest tone possible, Xiaoyu, I can be considered your uncle. Today's bet is fair and just. Losing to fellow Taoist Qinyu is because my skills are inferior. I accept this from the bottom of my heart, and there is no resentment in my heart. He nodded to Qinyu. Fellow Taoist Qinyu, I have other matters to attend to, so I won't stay here any longer. If you have a chance to come to Black Marsh in the future, please give me a chance to entertain you. After he finished speaking, he didn't even glance at Lei Jinyan and her husband. He turned and left the grand hall, soaring into the skies. At this moment, after countless foreshadowing, the surging tide shattered at the last moment with a paw. It was like a bubble beneath the sunlight. Gone. Wu Daoyuan had left like this, looking at his back. One felt as if he were on fire, as if he were being chased by a dog, or as if he were avoiding the plague. That's right, Wu Daoyuan was really hiding. Lei Jinyan had brought this upon herself for not opening her eyes, and he had no interest in accompanying her. If Qinyu really bore a grudge against him, wouldn't that be a tragedy? Even if he had condensed the glory of 5 divine seals and the Black Swamp Wu family was powerful enough, every time he thought of the moment when Qinyu smashed into the ground, Wu Daoyuan would feel a deep sense of helplessness and despair. This Qinyu's background was absolutely astonishing. If one provoked him, they would surely suffer misfortune. Great misfortune. The bustling banquet hall suddenly fell into a deathly silence. It was like a cold winter wind blew past, penetrating deep into the marrow. Everyone's eyes were filled with excitement, and their hearts leapt with joy. They quietly straightened their backs and felt a chill rise up their spines, as if all the blood in their bodies would freeze. Wu Daoyuan ran away. He should have run away. As for why he ran away, although he didn't say it clearly, no one was stupid. From Wu Daoyuan's final words and expression, it wasn't hard to guess the crux of the matter. Eyes fell on Qinyu. As they looked at his calm face, they wished they could lift their hands and dig out their own eyes. Wu Daoyuan, this was Wu Daoyuan. If even he was scared away and didn't dare to stay, just what sort of strength and background did he have? Thinking back to his performance just now, his sneer and eyes were obvious. Qinyu must have discovered it. He wasn't blind. He must have discovered it. What to do? What to do? Their hearts were filled with fear. At this time, the cultivators of Rock City that attended the banquet all hated Lei Jinyan to the bone. The resentment in their eyes nearly tore him apart. This bastard. Just what was he thinking? Was there something wrong with his head? It was fine if he wanted to suffer, but he actually deliberately misled them, causing them to unknowingly fall into his trap. No one spoke. They opened their eyes and then closed them, hoping that what they saw was only a dream. but unfortunately it wasn't. Qin Yu broke the silence. He calmly said, "Sir Lei, since Elder Wu has left, I don't think there's any need to return the things." He walked to Lei Xiaoyu's side and pulled her up. Beneath the awe and panic of countless people, they vanished from the grand hall, a banquet with so many twists and turns, and in the end, no one was happy. It was said that on this day, in the mansions of over half of Rock City's great families, loud curses filled the skies. The eldest son, Lei Jinyan, had worked so hard to build up his foundation for so many years, but now it was nearly destroyed and his status plummeted. And at this time, Lei Xiaoyu, who was holding a purple jade box, sank into a soft chair. She wasn't in the mood to care about what was happening outside. She felt as if she were wrapped up in happiness, as if she were floating in a hot spring. She was drunk on this feeling. She didn't understand how Qin Yu had accomplished this. It had to be known that the one he faced was Wu Daoyuan, someone that even her big brother had to carefully entertain. But this wasn't important. What was important was that Qin Yu was the person she had taken a liking to. Her eyesight was indeed the best. At this moment, Lei Xiaoyu rejoiced that she had called out to Qin Yu on that day. Otherwise, how could she have such a protector that she could rely on now? That's right, in Lei Xiaoyu's heart, Qin Yu was her protector. She believed that as long as he was by her side, all problems would be easily solved. There would be no more troubles or misfortunes that would befall her. Once more, Lei Xiaoyu sincerely prayed in her heart, hoping that the heavens would allow Qin Yu to stay by her side forever. The soul-forging array formation had been repaired and could be used at any time. But Qin Yu didn't immediately continue cultivating. He waited for Lei Qianjun to summon him. It was impossible to conceal what happened at the banquet. In order to obtain the blue cloud lotus root, he had drawn far too much of the limelight. Once Lei Qianjun obtained the information he wanted, he would definitely meet with him. In truth, this matter was outside of Qin Yu's plans. It was likely that it would trigger a series of uncontrollable changes, but he didn't regret it. If he could obtain the blue cloud lotus root and extend Lei Xiaoyu's life, then he was willing to bear the consequences. Chapter 9:16. Sir Qin, the city lord invites you. In the end, the one who came was the steward. Everyone in the city lord mansion understood his status. Qin Yu nodded. Then I'll have to trouble you. The steward smiled. He didn't say anything else and turned to lead the way. As Qin Yu followed behind, his expression didn't change, but he relaxed a little. Although the steward was a master at controlling his emotions, he didn't reveal anything. But Qin Yu's powerful divine sense told him that there was no strong hostility coming from this person. It seemed that the worst situation hadn't occurred yet. As long as he could explain himself, there would naturally be a chance. They arrived at the study. Today it was very quiet. There were no cultivators reporting, and there wasn't even a maid to be seen. The steward pushed open the door. "City Lord, Sir Qin has arrived." Lei Qianjuan's voice sounded out. "Let him in." Qin Yu stepped in. His feet suddenly froze, as if an invisible mountain was pressing down on his shoulders, wanting to crush him to pieces. He looked up and calmly met Lei Qianjuan's eyes. Qin Yu lightly said, "City Lord Lei, is this how you treat your guests?" Lei Qianjuan's tone was indifferent. "My guests all have a name. How can those who hide their heads and show their tails be counted?" Qin Yu said, "It is only to avoid some unnecessary troubles. I hope that the city lord can calm down. After all, up until today, I haven't done anything to harm the interests of the city lord mansion." Lei Qianjun coldly sneered. Every syllable seemed to boil with icy cold blood. "If it weren't for that, do you think you would still be standing here?" The terrifying oppression that filled the air was slowly withdrawn. But at this moment, Lei Qianjun was like a tumbling volcano that could erupt at any moment with a terrifying strength that could shake the heavens and earth. "You only have one chance. Speak." Qin Yu moved his neck, not immediately speaking. He walked to the side and sat down on a large chair. Then he slowly said, "City Lord should know that if it weren't for yesterday's banquet, I wouldn't have aroused your attention. The reason I did that was to save Miss Lei." A sharp light rose in Lei Qianjuan's eyes. "What did you say?" Qinyu said, "Although Miss Lei's injuries have been temporarily suppressed, she has less than 3 years to live. Am I right?" He looked at Lei Qianjun and said, "However, the blue cloud lotus I obtained from Wu Daoyuan yesterday is a miraculous treasure that was born from the filthiest land of heaven and earth. It can at least extend Miss Lei's lifespan by 10 years. Lei Qianjun was expressionless. His eyes locked onto Qinyu. After a long time, he suddenly said, "You come from Object Beyond Mountain?" Qinyu relaxed. Indeed, with Lei Qianjuan's intelligence, as long as he revealed a bit of information, he would be able to grasp the crux of the matter. He could pretend to be someone from the world beyond mountains, but he couldn't take the initiative to tell Lei Qianjun about this. He had to let Lei Qianjun guess it himself. Only then would he be able to dispel his suspicions. The first step was perfect. Now, Qinyu needed to use his own performance to truly obtain his approval. "City Lord, watch your words." Qinyu frowned. He lifted his hand and clenched it. Behind the desk, Lei Qianjuan's eyebrows jumped up. At this moment, as Qinyu clenched his fist, the space within the study was isolated from the outside world. No, this wasn't an ordinary isolation. Rather, it was like it was completely isolated from the outside world. There was no longer any karmic entanglement with the outside world. With Lei Qianjuan's strength, he could easily break through this isolation. But the mysteries behind it weren't simple at all. Could Qinyu really be a cultivator from Object Beyond Mountain? No, with that person's boundary and cultivation, the soul forging array formation wasn't worth mentioning at all. Why would he need to make such a detour to borrow it? Could it be that this boy was sent here by someone to probe him? Qinyu didn't know what Lei Qianjun was thinking, but he knew that it was impossible to convince him with just a little trick. Without waiting for Lei Qianjun to ask, Qinyu took a deep breath and said, "City Lord, you are too rash. How could you publicly mention the name of Object Beyond Mountain in the outside world? If others were to sense it, then all of my teacher's painstaking efforts would be ruined." Lei Qianjun frowned inwardly. He had grasped another key piece of information. Teacher? Could he be the disciple of that person from Object Beyond Mountain? If this was true, then borrowing the soul forging array formation was a joke. How could such a large flaw be exposed so quickly? Was it intentional, or was it to confuse others? Lei Qianjun remained expressionless. "How can you prove your identity?" Qinyu lightly said, "City Lord must be wondering why I would borrow the soul forging array formation if I were teacher's disciple." His expression was light, but his eyes were filled with pride. "City Lord Lei, you are overthinking things. This is only a reason for me to enter the city, Lord Mansion. Do you really think that I am borrowing the array formation to cultivate?" Lei Qianjun immediately thought of the 3 array formation grandmasters who had reported that the soul forging array formation's consumption had increased by 3 times. At the beginning, he hadn't been able to bear Lei Xiaoyu's sadness and had agreed. But in truth, even with his status, he still felt a bit of heartache. 3 times the consumption of the soul forging array formation. Every day it operated would consume a massive amount of wealth. Qinyu smiled. City Lord has thought of it. 3 times the consumption isn't because of a change in the world outside, but because of my cultivation. His expression turned solemn. He continued to say, in Object Beyond Mountain, Teacher wasn't able to cure Miss Lei, so he forcefully seized 3 years of her lifespan to resolve this karma. But for some unknown reason, after Miss Lei left, Teacher found it hard to calm his mind. I don't know the specific reason, but Teacher chose to leave. Not long after, Perhaps because I was acquainted with Miss Lay, teacher ordered me to enter the city lord's mansion in a reasonable manner and try to save Miss Lay's life. Originally, I thought that the blue cloud lotus in Wu Daoyuan's hands was a turning point to cure Miss Lay. But unfortunately, this blue cloud lotus grew for too short a time and could only prolong her life. For Lei Qianjun to have his current achievements, he wasn't someone who could be easily deceived. Although Qin Yu's words matched with what he knew, he still didn't completely believe him. Since you are a disciple of Object Beyond Mountain, why did you go through so much trouble to enter the city, Lord's mansion, through Xiaoyu? Lei Xiaoyu and Qin you had first met in the nunnery. At that time, Object Beyond Mountain hadn't existed yet. This was another flaw that Qin you couldn't find a perfect excuse to explain. But his tone was still calm. When I met Miss Lei, I was carrying out teacher's orders. Please forgive me for not being able to tell you the specifics. As for the city lord's problem, I don't know either. Lei Qianjun furrowed his eyebrows. This answer was a bit unexpected, but as he thought about it, it seemed reasonable. How could an original god explain too much to a disciple unknowingly? He had already believed most of Qin Yu's words. Qin Yu knew that the critical moment had arrived. Without hesitation, he lifted his hand and spread open his fingers. Within his soul space, the sun and moon force field spread out, gently wrapping around Shuizheng's aura. Then, pure fluctuations of an original god mark were released. Originally, I didn't want to reveal my identity because it didn't conform to the will that teacher gave me. But City Lord Lei is too suspicious. If I don't thoroughly prove myself, there will surely be twists and turns. Lei Qianjun stood up. I didn't know fellow Taoist Qin Yu's identity, so I ask that you forgive me for my rudeness. The aura of an original god mark absolutely couldn't be faked. Although he still had many doubts about this matter, there was no need to doubt Qin Yu's identity. Once he believed in Qin Yu's identity, these doubts no longer mattered. It wasn't that Lei Qianjun wasn't smart enough, but that Qin Yu had made ample preparations. From the moment he stepped into the study and mentioned the banquet, everything had entered into a rhythm that he controlled. Moreover, the original god mark on Qin Yu's body couldn't be any more real. Qin Yu shook his head. I can understand City Lord Lei, but I cannot allow a third person to know of my identity, including Miss Lei. I believe that since teacher had me go in such a roundabout way, he must have his own intentions. If I go against him, I fear there will be changes. Lei Qianjun was solemn. Fellow Taoist Qin Yu is right, but in the future, I will have to maintain my previous attitude. I ask that fellow Taoist forgive me if I have offended you in any way. Qin Yu nodded. Of course. Lei Qianjun took a deep breath. He cupped his hands together. Fellow Taoist Qin Yu, if I may be so bold as to ask Xiaoyu's injuries. Qin Yu shook his head. I haven't found a way yet, but the appearance of the blue cloud lotus root proves that anything is possible. Who knows if there isn't life in a land of death? A moment later, the study door opened. Qin Yu respectfully bowed, nodded to the steward, and then left. After the banquet, everyone was quietly paying attention to what the city Lord Mansion would do next. But the result was like a stone sinking into the sea without the slightest ripple. Sometimes the lack of response in itself was an extremely strong signal. Everyone simultaneously restrained their attention towards Qin Yu. To scare away Wu Daoyuan, this was a person that even the Rock City Lord didn't want to touch. It was best to stay as far away from him as possible. The soul-forging array formation opened. After bidding farewell to Lei Xiaoyu, Qin Yu stepped inside once more. 2 days later, Lei Qianjun personally went to the array formation testing hub. He stayed for an hour before leaving. As he thought, as soon as Qin Yu entered, the soul-forging array formation's consumption rate was 3 times that of normal. And before him, 3 array formation grandmasters had personally tested it, so the consumption rate was at a normal level. Like this, Lei Qianjun no longer had any doubts about Qin Yu's identity. 3 months later. Shwa! Qin Yu opened his eyes, a happy look on his face. He lifted his hand and spread open his fingers. On each fingertip, a different halo of light leaped about. There was white, black, blue, red, and yellow, 5 different colors. With a thought, the 5 colors of light began to flow. White poured into black, black into blue, blue into red, red into yellow, yellow into black. All of this formed a samsara. The 5 elements supported each other, endlessly flowing. Qin Yu had finally comprehended the power of the 5 elements, samsara. He could clearly feel a hidden resonance between the heavens and earth. As long as he wanted to, he could erupt with the samsara of the 5 elements at any time, drawing upon the feedback of the heavens and earth to condense the glory of the divine seal. The 3rd road to the divine realm had been opened at this moment, and at this time, Qin Yu could sense that there was still space left in his soul. Although it wasn't enough to support opening the 4th road to the divine realm, it wasn't too far off. He continued to refine soul treasures. The things that Lei Qianjun had given him were precious to begin with, and after being upgraded by the little blue lamp, their effects were even more astonishing. For instance, the sky moon fruit that Qin Yu had given to Wu Daoyuan. Because of the existence of the sun and moon force field in his soul space, Qin Yu didn't need to divide his attention to cultivate within the soul-forging array formation. What he needed to do was refine the treasures and perceive the great Tao. With the 5 elements samsara completed, Qin Yu chose the great Tao everlasting prosperity as the 4th road to the divine realm. Strictly speaking, this was the Tao that the Tao monarch walked. Before he died, he had passed on his inheritance to Qin Yu because he didn't want it to fall into the hands of the ancient race, and also because he wanted to leave himself a chance of survival. As long as Qin Yu cultivated his Tao, then in the endless future, the Tao monarch might be able to return from the great Tao and obtain a new life. But what a pity! Qin Yu believed that he wouldn't give the Tao monarch the slightest chance. Another month later, during the routine maintenance of the soul-forging array formation, Qin Yu and Lei Xiaoyu were playing chess. Suddenly, their complexions changed, and they looked up into the skies. Lei Xiaoyu looked over, puzzled. "Big brother Qin, what is it?" Qin Yu shook his head. "It's nothing. Let's continue." Just a moment ago, he sensed a powerful aura traversing through space and suddenly descending upon the city, Lord's mansion. Chapter 9:17. Darkness quietly spread throughout Lei Qianjuan's study. It covered the ground beneath his feet, touched the walls, and continued to spread upwards. Finally, it covered everything in sight. The source of all the darkness was a spatial rift in the study, from which a steady stream of darkness gushed out. Behind the desk, Lei Qianjuan's expression was calm as he watched the scene in front of him, but deep in his eyes, there was an unresolvable, complex emotion. Ji. A low laugh came from the spatial crack. "Lei Qianjun, you really didn't let me down. This is great." Before his voice faded away, 2 withered and skinny palms stretched out from within, grabbed the sides of the gap and pulled fiercely. Xiang Tai walked out, and his feet landed on the ground. Boom! A low humming sound exploded in the air. It was as if a towering mountain had fallen to the earth. At this time, a weak feeling spread in his heart. Xiang Tai frowned, and his turbid eyes suddenly erupted with a divine light. He turned around, his gaze seeming to pierce through space. "Humph! It seems that the city lord's mansion has an honored guest today. Lei Qianjun, don't you want to introduce me?" Lei Qianjun was expressionless. "If Mr. Xiang is interested, you can go by yourself. I have no objections as long as it doesn't interfere with our transaction." Xiang Tai's eyes narrowed. He let out a low laugh. "Fine. At this critical moment, I won't cause any more trouble." He raised his hand, his 5 skinny fingers with pitch-black nails. "Lei Qianjun, where is the crippling, heavenly sword?" Behind the desk, Lei Qianjun frowned in silence. The corners of Xiang Tai's mouth curled up. His skinny face had a cold expression. What? Are you worried that I won't keep my word? Don't worry. People like me care about trustworthiness the most. We won't do anything that would ruin our reputation. His tone changed and his cold aura rose. Or perhaps something has happened to the crippling heavenly sword. If that's the case, Lei Qianjun, you'll be in big trouble. The crippling heavenly sword is in my hands. Lei Qianjun took a deep breath and lifted his palm. Light surged, and the image of a sword slowly appeared. Xiang Tai closed his eyes and took a deep breath. His face was filled with excitement. Gigi, that's right, this is the smell. It is the true crippling heavenly sword. He raised his hand and clenched his fist. Darkness gushed out from his 5 fingers, corroding space and forming a black hole. His hand reached in. After several breaths of time, he withdrew his hand. There was a crimson stone in his palm, one that looked like fire jade. It was only the size of a child's fist. At first glance, it looked like an ordinary, colorful, and pure stone. But if one looked carefully, they would discover that the crimson color inside was actually a mass of sealed flames. As one looked at it, they would feel bursts of burning pain, as if their soul would be ignited. Xiang Tai licked his lips, undisguised greed in his eyes. His gaze fell on the stone. Lei Qianjun, your luck is truly enviable. After obtaining this origin fragment, you will have a good chance of breaking through to your current realm. Now it's yours. Pa! Lei Qianjun raised his hand and caught the origin fragment that had been tossed over. The moment he touched it, the energy in his body was attracted and became active. Just this alone was sufficient to prove that Xiang Tai hadn't tampered with it. Although these people were a group of incomparably terrifying demons, as he said before, he had never discounted his credibility. He loosened his hand. The broken, heavenly sword vibrated. As if it had sensed something, it flew to Xiang Tai's side on its own initiative. Jejejej! What a good treasure sword! What a good treasure sword! It actually has such a spiritual nature. Xiang Tai laughed. He flicked his sleeves and put away the broken heavenly sword. Lei Qianjun, our transaction is complete. If you have any needs in the future, you can contact me again. He took a step back, about to step into a spatial crack and leave. Lei Qianjun shouted out loud, "Mr. Xiang, please wait a moment." Xiang Tai stopped. His eyes swept over the origin fragment in Lei Qianjun's hand. He licked his lips and said, "Lei Qianjun, do you want to make a deal with me?" "Yes." Lei Qianjun had a calm expression. "I hope I can cure my daughter." Xiang Tai strangely smiled. "Daughter?" Lei Qianjun, "Are you sure you want to make a deal with me for this?" Lei Qianjun nodded. "I am sure." "Very good. I accept your deal. Now, tell me what problems she encountered." Lei Qianjun flicked his sleeves. A strand of Lei Xiaoyu's hair was wrapped up by an invisible energy and floated in midair. Xiang Tai opened his mouth. His tongue stretched out and wrapped around the strand of hair, pulling it back into his mouth. He chewed a few times. Suddenly his expression changed, and he spat out the hair. His voice became icy cold. "Lei Qianjun, is this really your daughter's hair?" Lei Qianjun said in a low voice, "My daughter, Lei Xiaoyu, is in my residence. If Mr. Xiang doesn't believe me, I can summon her and you can see for yourself." Xiang Tai coldly snorted. "I don't think you dare lie. Your daughter's problem is too serious. Even if you give me all the origin fragments, it won't be enough to save her life. Let's cancel this deal. Mr. Xiang, I don't expect you to directly save Xiaoyu. All I want is for you to give me a way to cure her." Xiang Tai strangely laughed several times. "So it's like this. It's not impossible, but this piece of information requires you to give me half the origin fragments." Lei Qianjun took a deep breath. "All right." His fingers slashed like a saber. The origin fragment was divided into 2 pieces. He flicked his sleeve and gave one half to Xiang Tai. Xiang Tai looked at him. Lei Qianjun, it's been 1,000 years and you've changed a lot. Is it worth giving up so much for a daughter? Lei Qianjun said faintly, I've satisfied Mr. Xiang's request. Please tell me your answer. Waha. Xiang Tai opened his mouth and swallowed the origin fragment, laughing loudly. Of course, as long as you can find an original god's corpse and refine its blood for the goo insects in your body, you can save her. Also, for the sake of the origin fragment, I'll give you a piece of information for free. The Divine Seal Saint Stone is about to arrive at the Imperial City. Perhaps it will give you the information you want. Then, Xiang Tai retreated into the space slit. The darkness covering the study retreated like a rising tide, disappearing into the space slit. Lei Qianjuan's face was solemn. Original God's corpse. His eyes fluctuated fiercely. Many thoughts emerged in his mind. Eventually he became resolute. If he hadn't been greedy that year, he wouldn't have implicated Xiaoyu and made her lose her mother at a young age. She had to suffer a lot. If he could save her, he was willing to try no matter how dangerous it was. Soon, the news spread in the city master's palace. Lei Qianjun wanted Lei Xiaoyu and Qin Yu to go to the imperial city to participate in the Divine Seal Saint Stone descending ceremony. Lei Jinyin, who had been abandoned by almost everyone because of the banquet, was hiding in a dark, sleeping chamber. His face twisted instantly when he heard this. Why? Father, what did I do wrong? Why do you want to abandon me? The Divine Seal Saint Stone of the Imperial City descended once every 1,000 years. It was a grand event in the human world. Not everyone was qualified to participate in the ceremony. Even with his status as the master of Peng City, he had to pay a big price to recommend the two. Today, Lei Qianjun had chosen Lei Xiaoyu and Qin Yu. In everyone's eyes, the future of Peng City had been decided. No, I'm the eldest son of the Lei family. Everything should be mine. Father, I can't accept this. What you're doing is wrong. I will make you understand that you've made a big mistake. Lei Jinyin was like a wounded beast. His roar was vicious and ruthless, making people shiver. Qin Yu stepped into Lei Qianjuan's study for the third time. Just like last time, there were only the two of them. Fellow Daoist Qin Yu. City Lord Lei, I wonder why you've called me here? Qin Yu frowned slightly. Lei Qianjun cupped his hands together. I have no intention of disturbing fellow Daoist's cultivation. It is related to Xiaoyu's injuries, so I had no choice but to invite you here. Qin Yu looked up. City Lord Lei has found a way? Lei Qianjun subconsciously lowered his voice, his tone solemn. The corpse of an original god. So this was the method. Qin Yu bitterly smiled. He already knew of this method, but he couldn't care less about something like the corpse of an original god. Seeing Qin Yu remain silent, Lei Qianjun said, I understand. This is easy to say, but it is incomparably difficult to accomplish. However, this is the last chance to save Xiaoyu. I must try. Qin Yu shook his head. City Lord Lei, I understand your feelings. However, I advise you not to hold any hope in this method. Lei Qianjun took a deep breath. Fellow Daoist Qin Yu, every 1,000 years the Imperial City will resonate with the heavens and earth. The Divine Seal Saint Stone will descend and evolve the great Tao. It is greatly beneficial to those who have yet to break into the divine realm. Qin Yu's eyes flashed. When he had been with Lei Xiaoyu these past days, he had inadvertently learned of this matter and had secretly made some plans. Why did Lei Qianjun mention this now? Qin Yu's thoughts raced. He maintained his composure. Is this related to City Lord Lei's words? Lei Qianjun said, I have obtained accurate information. When the Divine Seal Saint Stone descends, there will be news related to the corpse of an original god. He stood up and cupped his hands together. Fellow Daoist Qin Yu, I hope that you can accompany Xiaoyu to the Imperial City and participate in the grand ceremony of the Divine Seal's Saint Stone's descent. Of course, I will not force you. Fellow Taoist Qin, you can act according to the circumstances. If it is too dangerous, you can withdraw at any time. Qin Yu was silent for several breaths of time. When will the grand ceremony begin? Lei Qianjun said, There are still around 4 months. If we hurry, it will take half a month. In order to be safe, we will leave in 3 months. Qin Yu calculated, according to his current speed. 3 months should be more than enough time for him to refine all of the soul treasures. Humanity's imperial city, news about the corpse of an original god. Just these 2 points alone meant that there was no need to know more to know that they were incomparably dangerous. In his heart, during this period of time, Qin Yu should focus all of his efforts on cultivation and strive to open up more roads into the divine realm so that he could break through to the divine realm as soon as possible. But this matter concerned Lei Xiaoyu's life and death. The little blue lamp had once mentioned this method, and now Lei Qianjun had somehow learned of it. Qin Yu bitterly smiled. Could this be fate? He was doomed to be drawn into it, and there was no way to avoid it. In his mind, Lei Xiaoyu's smiling face appeared. She was incomparably happy every day, and what she loved the most was to cook all sorts of dishes for Qin Yu when he stopped cultivating. But she didn't know that her life had already reached its end. Even if she had the blue cloud lotus root to prolong her life, she would only be able to live for a dozen years. With every day that passed, she was one step closer to death. Chapter 918. In the distant imperial city, the aura of the world gathered. It was like 9 dragons ascending to the heavens, looking down on all living beings. In the northeast corner of this great capital city, there was a place where the sun could never shine. It was shrouded in darkness all year round. From high officials and dignitaries to peddlers and commoners, their faces would change slightly at the mention of this place, followed by fear in their hearts. As a part of the Heavenly Punishment Division, it was responsible for monitoring the Empire's territory. It had the authority to discover and eliminate any signs of threatening the Empire's rule. Thus, it had a new name, the Heaven Punishment Division. It carried out punishments on behalf of the heavens and assisted the royal family in conquering the world. The Heaven Punishment Division was shrouded in darkness, preventing any light from shining in. Under the illumination of torches, several figures sat around a round table in the still, incomparably dark hall. Their faces flickered as the flames flickered, adding a bit of coldness to the atmosphere. Xiao Yunhai's expression was indifferent. The royal family rules the world, but this world is too vast. We allow other shepherds to exist to make this world more stable. However, there will always be some shepherds who, as their strength continues to grow, will develop ambitions that they shouldn't have. At this time, our Heaven Punishment Division needs to step in and eliminate these shepherds who try to escape our control. We need to establish an obedient and controllable shepherd who relies on the royal family to survive and eliminate any potential disturbances. He paused for a moment, his voice becoming even colder. Lei Qianjun is one of these shepherds who has gradually begun to show the will to resist. He must die. Another person said, Lord Xiao, we have already begun to lay out our plans. However, before things have even begun, Lei Qianjun has already attacked. The Wu family that we chose was completely eradicated in a single day. Now Lei Qianjun is on guard. I fear he won't be able to act against him in a short period of time. Xiao Yunhai lightly said, Lei Qianjun is indeed an outstanding talent. I have underestimated him before, but he will be destroyed if he tries to resist the ruler of the royal family. He is intelligent and callous, but he miscalculated one thing from the start. The parasites were planted by the Wu family, but they were secretly provided by our Heaven Punishment Division. They are far more terrifying than he imagined. I have already chosen a new shepherd. He will cooperate with us. Once Lei Xiaoyu dies, he will suffer a backlash from the parasite bloodline, and Lei Qianjun will be seriously injured. I will leave the following matters to you. You must be fast and not give him any chances. A somber atmosphere suddenly condensed. Yes, Lord Shao. Pung City, City Lord Mansion. As the teleportation array lit up, an astonishing fluctuation spread out from within, causing the space to shake violently, undulating up and down like rolling waves. In the next moment, space suddenly distorted, and the figures of Lei Xiaoyu, Qin Yu, and the others within the array formation rapidly blurred. But right at this moment, an unforeseen event occurred. The distorted space suddenly trembled as if an invisible hand had slammed down heavily. The distorted space instantly warped. The transmission array formation's protection for the cultivators being transmitted was severed. Panicked and despairing screams echoed out. Then, massive red blossoms bloomed without warning, like scarlet flowers. Lei Qianjun let out a roar as a berserk aura burst out of his body in an attempt to stabilize the teleportation formation and stop the teleportation process. But it was too late. With a loud bang, the hall where the transmission array was placed was instantly torn apart by the terrifying force. Countless broken rocks and broken trees were wrapped in a powerful force, whistling in all directions, piercing through and destroying everything they touched. Lei Qianjun put down his hands that were in front of him and looked at the ruins of the great hall. His face was ashen, and a ruthless killing intent surged in the depths of his eyes like a tsunami. Who is it? I swear that I will find you and kill you. His roar was like a clap of thunder, instantly reverberating through the skies above Peng City. Countless cultivators' expressions changed as they looked in the direction of the city lord's mansion. They didn't know what had happened to cause the city lord to lose his composure like this. Before they could think any further, 3 tyrannical auras suddenly descended upon the city lord's mansion. Then a pitch-black curtain of light appeared and enveloped the entire city lord's mansion, isolating all auras from the outside and also cutting off all the peeping gazes. Looking at the pitch-black curtain of light, those who knew the secret behind it couldn't help but tremble. All the blood drained from their faces. The Heavenly Punishment Division. It was the Heavenly Punishment Division. They had moved against the city lord's mansion. No matter what the final result was, endless storms would be set off within Peng City's territory. Tens of thousands of heads would roll to the ground. Lei Qianjun's expression was cold as he swept his gaze over the 3 figures in the air. So it was you bunch of shady things who were behind this. Lei Qianjun, you harbor thoughts of rebellion. We have come under orders to take your head. The black-robed, Heavenly Punishment Division powerhouse's expression was indifferent. He looked at Lei Qianjun as if he was looking at a dead man. It wasn't that he was arrogant and didn't place Lei Qianjun in his eyes. Rather, he was confident enough. Under the cover of the Heavenly Punishment Domain, the strength of the 3 of them would greatly increase, while Lei Qianjun would be severely weakened. Under such circumstances, there was no room for error. There was a trace of pity in the eyes of the 3 Heavenly Punishment Division powerhouses. Lei Qianjun had been in charge of Peng City for many years. To be able to arouse the fear of the royal family meant that he was outstanding enough and could be called an overlord. Unfortunately, his judgment in giving birth to a son wasn't good. If it weren't for that, how could they have succeeded so easily? Don't say anything else. Kill him. Another powerhouse from the Heavenly Punishment Division spoke. In the next moment, a terrifying aura soared into the sky. Violent energy fluctuations instantly tore through space and swept out like an evil dragon, pulverizing everything into powder. The earth trembled and the sky wailed. The entire city, Lord's Mansion, was instantly thrown into a storm. Lei Jinyan had killed everyone in the main hall. He stood in the blood and looked up at the center of the battle. Fear flashed in his eyes, but it eventually turned into madness and resentment. Lord Father, you forced me to do this. You forced me to do this. But I promise you that the Lei family will not fall. I will continue to rule over the territory you have conquered and lead the Lei family to a new peak. Lei Jinyan roared. He lifted his hand and cut open his palm. Blood rapidly flowed out, falling into the large scarlet pool on the ground. Gurgle, gurgle. The scarlet blood on the ground began to bubble, violently tumbling about like boiling water. A strange face appeared in the tumbling blood. There was a pair of curved horns on its head, and its entire face was flat, without the slightest trace of facial features. Now, Lord Father, please rest in peace. From now on, this world no longer belongs to you. Lei Jinyan roared. He half knelt on the ground and plunged his hands into the tumbling blood. The blood in his body seemed to be drawn out, wildly gushing out, causing the tumbling blood on the ground to become even more intense. That strange face with no facial features and a pair of horns on its head rapidly solidified. Then there was a deep roar that exploded like thunder. It was deep and heavy, filled with endless slaughter intent, as if it came from the endless depths of the earth and wanted to destroy everything. 1 against 3, Lei Qianjun, who was fiercely fighting the Heaven Punishment Department masters, suddenly frowned and spat out a mouthful of blood. This blood was bright red at first, but in the blink of an eye it turned pitch black. It was thick and dirty, emitting a foul stench. Through their bloodline connection, he instantly knew what was happening. He angrily roared, "Unfilial son! Lei Qianjun, do not resist any more. If you are killed by the 3 of us, perhaps you will have a chance to reincarnate. But if you are destroyed by the abyss projection, even your soul will vanish. There will not be a single trace of you left in this world. If you wait for death, you will die happily. Continue to struggle, and you'll truly experience what is called endless purgatory. Give up. Today, if we join forces, there is no chance of you surviving." Lei Qianjun reared his head back and roared. "Shut up!" He lifted a hand and clawed at his forehead. His fingers tore through his flesh and blood, ruthlessly pulling outwards. "Get out of here!" In his hand, he tightly grasped countless black tentacles. They were like living creatures, struggling and screaming as they tried to drill back into his body. Across from him, the complexions of the 3 Heaven Punishment Department powerhouses changed. They could clearly feel the changes in Lei Qianjun's aura. This is bad, he's hiding his strength. Bang, 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 without any hesitation, the 3 Heaven Punishment Department powerhouses attacked with all their strength. There was a heaven-shaking explosion and terrifying fluctuations of strength, covering and cutting apart everything. No one was able to clearly see what was happening. But at this time, angry cries filled with disbelief sounded out from within. "Impossible! How can you do this? Run! Today is a trap!" "Ah, damn it! I've been entangled." At the same time, Lei Jinyun's half-kneeling body suddenly froze. His eyes widened as he stared at the black tentacles that had drilled out from the blood, imprisoning and binding him. "No, how could this be? I don't believe this." Facing his cries of alarm, the strange face that emerged from the tumbling blood suddenly opened its eyes, a mocking look in them. In that moment, Lei Jinyan seemed to have all his strength sucked out of him. He lay paralyzed in the blood, his face filled with defeat and despair. "Pa! Pa!" There was the sound of footsteps, and a calm steward appeared in his line of sight. He swept his eyes over Lei Jinyan and lightly said, "Young master, although you are the old master's son, you have never truly understood him. Otherwise, how could you have done such a stupid thing?" As if he had seen the last straw of hope, Lei Jinyan began to struggle. "Uncle Jean, save my Uncle Jean. I was only fooled by someone for a moment. That's why I did such a thing. You looked down on me as I grew up. I don't want to die, I don't want to die." The steward gently shook his head. Without saying anything, he turned and retreated to the side. Lei Qianjun walked into the hall. He had no expression on his face. Besides his slightly pale complexion, there were no other visible injuries. The 3 Heaven Punishment Department masters that had fought with him had already disappeared. Besides himself, no one knew what had happened. But it was clear that victory and defeat had already been decided. Lei Jinyun's eyes fell on Lei Qianjun. His entire body shook and he subconsciously curled up. At this moment he felt an endless chill. "Father!" Lei Qianjun slowly said, "I won't kill you." Lei Jinyun's eyes lit up with joy. But before he could say anything, Lei Qianjun turned and left. It was as if the reason he had come here was to look at Lei Jinyun one last time and say one last sentence. "Thank you, Father, thank you. Your son knows he was wrong. He really knows he was wrong." The black tentacles that bound him retracted. Lei Jinyun crazily kowtowed, his face filled with unconcealable joy. The steward glanced at him, his eyes filled with pity. Even at this moment, the young master still didn't understand his father. Sometimes death was forgiveness, but living was the greatest punishment. Chapter 919. No, no. What is this? Father. Dong. The door was sealed, interrupting Lei Jinyun's mournful screams. Lei Qianjun stood with his back facing the door. He lifted his head to look at the pitch-black, heavenly execution field that covered the sky. He was silent like a statue. The steward stood next to him. I never thought that the first person to betray me, the one who would bear the backlash of the Guin sect, would be my own son. Tell me, is this the karmic retribution I must bear after all the slaughter I've committed over the years? The steward said, "If you didn't kill, you would have died already." Lei Qianjun sighed. "Yeah, if I didn't kill, I wouldn't have lived to this day. So I'm not wrong, right?" The steward lowered his head. "You're not wrong. If I'm not wrong, then they are wrong. And those who have done wrong, no matter who they are, they will have to pay the price." The steward was hesitant. "Miss Shi?" Lei Qianjun shook his head. "Xiaoyu's aura disappeared. I can't sense her, but I believe she's not dead yet. Activate the spies in the Imperial City. If Xiaoyu survives, she will go there." Lei Qianjun lifted a finger. The heavenly execution field that covered the city master mansion collapsed. Lei Qianjun stepped into the void. "I'll leave the rest to you. I will seclude myself and try to break through to the original God realm. If I am lucky enough to succeed, this world will change." The teleportation array was attacked. The moment the formation collapsed, Qin Yu only had time to protect Lei Xiaoyu before he was swept away by the turbulent space current. That feeling was like falling into an underground river, rolling and crashing in the rugged and undulating underground river. But the entire process was 100 times, 1,000 times more dangerous. If Qin Yu didn't have eyes that could see the essence of things, he would have already been torn to pieces. Qin Yu didn't know how much time had passed, but deep in his eyes a dark gold light bloomed. With a loud shout, Qin Yu lifted his hand and punched out. "Kacha! Kacha! Kacha!" Sounds of bones breaking rang out one after another. Warm blood splashed on his face. He could even feel the minuscule pieces of flesh that had been minced sticking to his face and rolling down. Qin Yu didn't check his wounds. His other hand held the unconscious Lei Xiaoyu, and he got out of the turbulent space current. Bang! A loud sound rang out, and the ground instantly collapsed. Large cracks spread out from the edge of the deep pit. Qin Yu's complexion changed. He didn't even have time to look around. His feet moved, his body like a phantom, as he shifted several dozen feet in the air, avoiding the poison that sprayed at him. Sizzle! When the venom landed on the ground, it emitted a violent, corrosive sound. A foul stench rose into the air, revealing large potholes. The pitch-black viper was as thick as a child's arm, and there were 2 bumps on its head, as if it could grow horns at any moment. As it saw the 2 of them avoid its attack, its pupils shrank and it turned to flee at an astonishing speed. Humph! As it sneered, the poisonous snake's body suddenly froze. It felt the threat of death and screamed as it opened its mouth to spit out a white poisonous fog. This was its innate poison, and once it was used, the consumption would be astonishing. However, at this time it couldn't care too much. Unfortunately, the white fog didn't delay the snake's death at all. Qin Yu's arm passed through without hesitation, allowing the poisonous gas to invade his body through the wound. His 5 iron-like fingers grasped the viper, and a wild strength rumbled into it. It was like a raging current of strength had swept through its body, sweeping through it and extinguishing all life. Qin Yu's fingers pressed down, and his fingertips pierced through the viper's corpse. Its body withered at a speed visible to the naked eye, and crimson blood energy rapidly poured into Qin Yu's body. His arm had been injured by the turbulent space flow, and his flesh and blood wildly wriggled and regenerated, restoring itself to its original state in just a breath of time. The ancient, undying body. In an injured state, it could forcefully plunder the life energy of others to speed up its own recovery. At the same time, the white poisonous substance was also sucked into Qin Yu's body, fusing into his right index finger. It was like an endless abyss that could hold all poisons in the world. Pah! Qin Yu loosened his fingers and allowed the withered corpse of the viper to fall to the ground. He held on to Lei Xiaoyu and looked around. In the pitch-black sky, there wasn't a single trace of light. This was because some sort of dark green shrub grew on the ground, emitting a dim light that barely illuminated the surroundings. The reason Qin Yu had chosen this place to make his breakthrough was because the space barrier here was the weakest. Now, it seemed that this place wasn't ordinary at all. But since he had already come here, there was no point in thinking too much about it. Qin Yu looked around and then chose a direction to leave in. A moment later, Qin Yu's expression was dignified. He stood in front of a black stone wall. There were countless bumps on its surface, as if it were filled with fruits. A dark golden light flashed in his eyes, and Qin Yu's complexion changed. Without hesitation, he brought Lei Xiaoyu far away from this stone wall. Another hour later, on top of an ancient tree that had been withered for who knew how many years, Qin Yu finally found a tree hole that had been occupied by monster beasts. He drove them away without hesitation. Several birds circled around the ancient tree several dozen times before finally leaving unwillingly under Qin Yu's icy cold gaze, vanishing from sight. He brought Lei Xiaoyu into the tree hole. After carefully sweeping out with his divine sense, Qin Yu's thoughts stirred and the sun-moon force field quietly spread out, covering the entire tree hole. After finishing this, he let out a sigh of relief. He placed Lei Xiaoyu in the dry grass and then sat down cross-legged on the side. In the turbulent space flow, in order to protect Lei Xiaoyu, Qin Yu had suffered considerable injuries. He had to recover as soon as possible in order to deal with unknown dangers. Although this place hadn't been completely explored, Qin Yu had a very bad feeling about it. Time quietly passed. 6 hours later, on this strange land, all of the dark green shrubbery that emitted a ghostly light seemed to sense the arrival of danger. They curled up their branches and shrank into round sticks that shot back into the ground. Like this, the last source of light was extinguished and the world fell into endless darkness. Qin Yu's heart skipped a beat and he awoke from his cultivation. Without hesitation, he stood up and walked towards the entrance of the tree hole. What he saw was an incomparably dark scene, as if an eternal night had arrived. But this scene only lasted for a brief period of time. Without any warning, a blood-red crescent moon appeared in the dark vault of heaven. A faint blood-red light sprinkled down from the blood-red moon, covering the entire earth as if it were wearing clothes stained with blood. The tree hole beneath his feet suddenly shook. Shock flashed in Qin Yu's eyes. He saw that the ancient tree that had been dead for countless years had suddenly come to life beneath the illumination of the blood-red moon. The withered, bone-like branches rapidly softened, turning into blood-red tentacles that floated in the air as if they were searching for something. Suddenly, the branches that had turned into tentacles seemed to sense something. They howled as they rushed towards the tree hole. Qin Yu's complexion changed, but his intuition told him that he absolutely couldn't do anything now. Otherwise, the situation would spiral out of control. When he was just 100 feet away from the tree hole, all the tentacles stopped. Qin Yu looked up and saw a shallow slash mark in his line of sight. It was like someone had casually chopped at it with a hatchet. The mark wasn't long nor deep, and it emitted a halo of silver light. It was very, very shallow, so faint that it was hard to detect. But it was precisely the existence of this slash mark, or to be more precise, the silver light it emitted that caused the withered tree tentacles to not dare to approach. Qin Yu stood in the tree hole, the tentacles wrapped around it. The slash mark was between them. Although it seemed shallow, it was an insurmountable gap. Finally, with an unwilling howl, all the tentacles retracted and the tree hole was restored to its previous floating state. Rumble, rumble. The earth rumbled and the tree hole shook even more violently. Qin Yu lifted a hand to steady Lei Xiaoyu's body and looked down at the ground. This revived, withered tree had pulled out countless roots from the ground. They wove together to form 7 or 8 thick legs that rapidly moved away. The withered tree's roots were astonishingly developed. At this time, the legs that wove together were thousands of feet long. The 7 or 8 legs spun like wind and fire wheels, rumbling as they moved at an astonishing speed. In just a moment, the withered tree crossed a great distance and arrived in front of an incomparably steep mountain that was almost 90 degrees into the heavens. Without any hesitation, the withered tree moved its roots and legs and stepped onto the mountain. When the roots touched the mountain, they instantly dispersed, turning into countless roots that wrapped around everything. Wherever they could be fixed, the withered tree dragged its massive body upwards. From afar, this was an astonishing scene. An ancient tree that seemed to support the heavens swung its 7 or 8 legs as it wildly rushed up the steep mountain peak. Soon, the withered tree rushed to the top of the mountain. In front of it was a massive mountain valley that was surrounded by rolling mountains. Qin Yu immediately discovered that the edges of this mountain valley were crisscrossed with slash marks similar to the one in front of the tree hole. Most of them emitted a silver light and formed a circle. At this time, a massive number of human cultivators and monster beasts were gathered in this circle formed by the slash marks. The cultivators and monster beasts that would normally fight each other when they saw each other were now peacefully coexisting, nervously looking all around. The ancient tree that Qin Yu was on attracted a great deal of attention, but they only glanced at it before looking away. It was clear that what made the cultivators and monster beasts so nervous and temporarily put down their hostility wasn't this withered tree. At this time, not too far away, there was a loud, rumbling sound. Qin Yu turned to see a giant beast that only had bones left over. It was wildly rushing towards the mountain peak. Its 4 limbs had sharp claws that could easily pierce through hard mountain rock. Its speed was astonishing, and its massive body left behind a series of afterimages. But right now, Qin Yu's eyes were focused on the places where the bone beast passed. Its claws had clearly torn apart the mountain, but in the blink of an eye it was restored to its original state. It was like this mountain itself was a life form that possessed a powerful regenerative ability. It was truly strange. Shua, the bone beast, leapt onto the mountain peak. It reared its head back and roared at the blood moon. Then it suddenly turned around, its empty eye sockets meeting Qin Yu's. At this time, a roar sounded out from deep within Qin Yu's mind. It was like billowing thunderclaps, and a violent shaking strength seemed as if it would tear apart his soul. With a cold snort, Qin Yu's dazed expression became firm once more. A dark golden light flashed in the depths of his eyes. The roar of the great beast in his mind suddenly disappeared. The bone beast deeply looked at Qin Yu and then turned its head to sit down. It seemed to acknowledge that Qin Yu had the qualifications to stand here. In the next hour, 10 more terrifying life forms climbed up the steep mountain. Among them was a giant withered bone python, a blood-red withered vine that covered the skies, and there was even an unknown existence that had its head cut in half. But even though it was only half a head and only a single scarlet eye remained, the dangerous aura it released was enough to make one's heart race. Including the withered tree, all of them shared a common point, and that was that they were all creatures that had died long ago. Now, they were resurrected beneath the illumination of the blood moon. Qin Yu was secretly startled. He wasn't weak, but he didn't have the slightest confidence he could deal with any one of these 12 terrifying life forms. Chapter 920. As Qin Yu's thoughts raced, a new change occurred in the situation. Around the mountain valley, a nearly circular cut mark emitted a silver light that suddenly rose up. Then, a silver circle rapidly condensed. Perhaps it was because far too many years had passed, but some of the cut's strength had been gradually exhausted until they finally lost their might. They no longer emitted silver light. Instead, they became tiny gaps in the silver circle. The human cultivators and monster beasts gathered in the circle didn't need any orders. They dispersed on their own initiative, silently rushing towards these gaps. In the next moment, a deep roar sounded out. In the pitch-black skies above, the blood moon hanging high in the sky began to shine even brighter. Steep mountain ranges circled around a valley. At this time, 12 terrifying life forms occupied the summit, their eyes filled with excitement. Qin Yu finally saw what truly left the cultivators and monster beasts in the silver circle panic-stricken. On the steep stone walls, bulges began to appear. Then the bulges split open from the middle. Warriors wielding sabers and wearing black armor with wings on their backs walked out. Bathed in the blood-red moonlight, they roared as they opened their eyes. Within them was only slaughter and destruction. Without hesitation, the black-armored saber warriors that emerged from the mountains flapped their wings and rushed towards the gaps in the silver circle. Slaughter erupted in an instant. Both sides didn't communicate. It was like once they encountered each other, they were doomed to fight to the death. Die, you monsters! A human cultivator waved his hand, and a brilliant divine light condensed into a crimson sword phantom that cut the incoming black-armored warrior in half. But before he could catch his breath, another black-armored warrior rushed forwards. Without dodging the sword light, he thrust the saber in his hand into the human cultivator's chest. As his body was pierced through by the saber, the light in the human cultivator's eyes dimmed and he fell to the ground. Qin Yu's pupils shrank. He could clearly see that after the black-armored warrior's saber pierced through him, the aura of the human cultivator's soul instantly vanished from sight, as if it had been swallowed up by the saber. No, it hadn't been swallowed up by the saber. Rather, the soul remained in the cultivator's body, but it had broken into countless pieces that fused with the flesh and blood, turning into a strange state that Qin Yu had never seen before. Following that, another black-armored warrior rushed out. He grabbed the cultivator's corpse and vanished from sight. The resurrected, sky-propping ancient tree suddenly let out a roar. All of its withered branches turned into tentacles and extended into the valley. Under the illumination of the blood moon, the surface of these tentacles began to burn with blood flames. Then, wisps of scarlet rose from the valley and gathered around the burning tentacles. This was the qi and blood that had been dispersed after the creature had been killed. As soon as it touched the flames, it disappeared without a trace. Qin, you could clearly feel withered tree's excitement. It seemed that absorbing this blood vitality would be greatly beneficial to him. At the same time, the other 11 terrifying creatures on the mountain peak began to do the same thing. They seemed to have come to an agreement a long time ago. Each of them occupied a position and divided the qi and blood produced in the valley. All the cultivators and demonic beasts in the silver halo were fighting with their lives on the line. They knew very well that if they let the black-armored warriors charge in, they would all die. Up until now, this was the first time Qin Yu had personally witnessed such a brutal and tragic battle. The despairing screams of death nearly never stopped. This slaughter continued for a full 24 hours. When the number of cultivators and demonic beasts in the Silver Halo was reduced to less than half of what it had been, the black-armored warriors that were crazily trying to break through the gap suddenly retreated like a tide. They had come as fast as fire, and when they retreated, they were also straightforward and efficient, without any hesitation. At the same time, they brought away all their fallen companions, as well as the sabers they had left behind. In just a dozen breaths of time, all the sounds of fighting vanished, and the black-armored warriors melted back into the mountain. If it weren't for the thick smell of blood in the air, one would have suspected that everything they saw just now was an illusion. Withered Tree emitted a satisfied cry. It retracted all of its tentacles and began to rumble down the mountain. Qin Yu's eyes swept around. The bone beast and the other 11 terrifying creatures also turned and left in the direction they had come from. A moment later, the ancient tree returned to where it had first taken root. The roots that wove together into a thigh spread out and drilled into the ground, restoring itself to its original appearance. The swaying tentacles turned back into withered branches. They pointed towards the heavens, as if they were silently shouting something. At the entrance of the tree hole, the silver light emitted by the slash mark faded away, restoring itself to its ordinary appearance. Qin Yu looked up into the skies. The blood moon that hung high in the sky rapidly dimmed and faded away. Like a shadow, it finally vanished from sight. This part of the world fell into darkness once more. Then, several breaths of time later, it was illuminated by a dim light. On the ground, the dark green shrubs that had been hiding underground drilled out and quietly stretched out their bodies. Seeing this, Qin Yu suddenly had a flash of understanding. The blood moon and these shrubs were like the samsara of the sun and moon. When the blood moon covered the earth, horror would descend if this was true. Then when the shrubs illuminated the world, it should be safe. Taking a deep breath, Qin Yu sat down cross-legged at the entrance of the tree hole. A moment later, his eyes flashed open, a dark gold light surging deep within them. At this moment, the world in front of him suddenly turned blurry. Whether it was the heavens above him or the earth below him, it was like countless shadows were piled up together, layer upon layer. After a long time, Qin Yu finally couldn't bear it any longer. His eyes turned sour, and he slowly closed them. Suddenly, a massive amount of tears gushed out, each of them containing a faint trace of blood. Although he wasn't able to find the essence of this world, he had already figured out a clue. It was buried deep within this world. Big Brother Qin. Lei Xiaoyu's voice rang out from behind him. After being unconscious for nearly a day and a night, she had finally woken up. Qin Yu wiped away his tears and turned. "You're awake." Lei Xiaoyu exclaimed, "Big Brother Qin, your eyes." Qin Yu smiled. "It's nothing. It's just some temporary discomfort. I'll recover after several days of rest." Although he could not see Lei Xiaoyu's expression, he could hear her exhale. "That's good. Big Brother Qin, where are we now?" Qin Yu shook his head. "I don't know either. The transmission array was attacked, and we were lost in the turbulent flows of space. After rushing out, we arrived here." Lei Xiaoyu was silent for a moment. "The others," Qin Yu said. "I'm sorry, but my abilities are limited. I can only save you." Lei Xiaoyu shook her head. "Big Brother Qin, thanks for saving me again." Feeling her gloomy mood, Qin Yu changed the topic. He asked curiously, "You don't seem to be worried about City Lord Lei?" Lei Xiaoyu grunted. "My father isn't so easy to deal with." These simple words revealed a formidable self-confidence. If these words were to spread back to Rock City, many people would surely understand why Lei Qianjun doted on this daughter of his so much. It wasn't just because he felt guilty. Qin Yu stood up. "How are you feeling?" Lei Xiaoyu nodded. "I'm fine." "Big Brother Qin, are we leaving?" Qin Yu shook his head. "No, we are only leaving temporarily. We will return soon." He opened his bloodshot eyes. After blinking several times, he was barely able to adjust to the light in front of him. Qin Yu reached out and grabbed Lei Xiaoyu. He took several steps forwards and leapt up. With a light sound, he landed beneath the ancient tree that supported the heavens. He turned to look at the ancient tree. After a long period of hesitation, Qin Yu lifted a hand and drew in the air. With just a few strokes, space fluctuated and the tree hole in front of him vanished. After finishing this, Qin Yu didn't delay any longer. After carefully determining the direction, he pulled Lei Xiaoyu away. In the pitch-black skies, the air was cold and gloomy. Even though there was light emitted by the shrubs, this world still gave off an endless and gloomy feeling. Lei Xiaoyu subconsciously shrank back. She grabbed onto Qin Yu's hand and slightly tightened her grip. "Don't be afraid. Just follow behind me." As Qin Yu spoke, he flicked his sleeves. Space twisted and a black shadow scurried over. The black shadow that was imprisoned in the distorted space fiercely struggled. Its claws and teeth madly tore at the space around it, emitting a sound that made one's scalp tingle. This was a black rat that had been enlarged several times over. Now this rat's body was taut. Although it was covered in fur, it still revealed its iron-hard muscles. It was a horrifying sight. Qin Yu suddenly raised his hand and thrust it into the distorted space. "Big Brother Qin!" Lei Xiaoyu cried out in alarm. "Kacha!" The ferocious black rat rushed forwards and bit down on Qin Yu's palm. Unfortunately, no flesh and blood were torn apart. Instead, its sharp teeth were forcefully broken. Qin Yu gripped his palm. The black rat howled miserably, and its body wildly twitched. Then it withered at a speed visible to the naked eye. Its shiny black fur withered and darkened as its life aura was extinguished. Qin Yu's eyes brightened. He was a bit surprised by the rich blood vitality contained within this black rat's body. Although it was a bit wild and violent to the ancient immortal body, he only needed to slightly refine it to thoroughly suppress it and take it for his own use. The damage caused to his mortal body from shattering the chaotic flows of space had nearly been completely restored. He turned to look at Lei Xiaoyu. He thought that she would be a bit unnatural. After all, what Qin Yu used now was a cruel and ruthless method that belonged to the ancient race, to directly plunder the blood vitality of other living beings for his own use. Qin Yu had intentionally used it in front of Lei Xiaoyu. He hoped to use this matter to weaken Lei Xiaoyu's favorable impression of him. But what he saw was this little girl staring at him with wide eyes and a curious expression. Her voice was filled with worship. "Big Brother Qin is so fierce. What method is this? I've never seen it before." Cough! Qin Yu's heart froze, and he nearly coughed out loud. He thought that she was truly worthy of being the young miss of the City Lord Mansion. She truly had a big heart. But thinking about it, Lei Qianjuan's current status was obtained by slaughtering his way through mountains of corpses and seas of blood. Lei Xiaoyu was his daughter, so no matter how pampered she was, it was impossible for her to avoid being involved. He was likely used to such matters long ago. It's just some minor methods, not worth mentioning. As Qin Yu spoke, he pulled her forward, extinguishing the plans in his heart. Lei Xiaoyu allowed him to pull her along. She lowered her head, a crafty light flashing in her eyes.